Chapter 520. All was silent. There was a chill in the corner outside, Xiangyang district, that made one's hair stand on end. Takshu, who was dressed in a female battalion uniform, waited in the dark for a while. There was a rustling sound in the bushes in the distance. After a while, a short figure wrapped in a thick black cloth emerged from the bushes. This strange person was abnormally short. When he stood up, he was only a head taller than the lush bushes outside the city. If he bent down and hid in the bushes, he would not be seen at all. The person groped his way to Takshu's position and made a strange chuckle. The person made a hoarse and piercing voice and said in a peculiar tone, "You're more precious than the princess in the palace. It's so hard to see you." Takshu was initially leaning against the corner of the city wall. When she saw the person approaching, she put down her arms and threw a parcel at him. "Here's what you want. Take it and get lost." Takshu threw the parcel into the man's arms and was about to leave. "Wait, little lady." The short man chuckled and asked in a strange voice, "I heard that Xiangyang district has countless riches. Even the priceless colored glaze wears come from here. You've been serving that young master personally for so many years. Don't tell me you don't even know the slightest bit of information? You send back useless things every time. Are you trying to get rid of a beggar?" Taksha glanced sideways and looked down at the man coldly. She said, "I've always ignored beggars. If they dare to pester me, they'll definitely die a horrible death. Tell me, if you're a beggar, how would I get rid of you? I'm just a lowly servant by her side. I can't enter places like the study, let alone get anything useful. I've tried my best." The man saw that Taksha was a little angry and quickly comforted her. "Don't be angry, little lady. I'm only saying this because I have no other choice. You know that you haven't sent back much useful information all these years. The higher-ups are already angry. If you continue to slack, both you and I will have to bear the consequences. I don't think you want your beautiful sister to enter that kind of place and be defiled, right?" Taksha sneered and said coldly, "You're really useless. You keep threatening and using the same trick." The man chuckled and shamelessly admitted, "It doesn't matter if the technique is old or not, as long as it works. I heard that Lu Shi treats you very well. In the future, he can take you in as a concubine. If you can give birth to a son or a daughter, considering the relationship between master and servant, your life will be good. I only have a handle on your sister now. If I don't hold on her tightly, with your intelligence, why would you risk your life for me?" Takshu revealed a disgusted expression and lowered her head. She seemed to be thinking about what the other party had said and was deliberating about something. The man continued, "Forget it. I heard that the glazed artifact is extremely precious. It belonged to the Marquis of Guanyi, Sugong. Even mortals can't get their hands on it. Now it's all been bought by the barbarians of the northern borderline with a huge sum of money. I'm not begging you to get me the colored glaze, but you have to find a way to get me the way to make the green brick. Don't tell me that you can't even do this after serving Lu Shi for so many years." Takshu pursed her lips, and there was a look of struggle in her eyes. It was as if she was fighting with herself. After a while, she said, "I'll try my best, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get it. You know that Lu Shi is extremely vigilant. Apart from herself, she doesn't trust anyone. Even I can't know all her secrets. The way to make the green brick is probably hidden in a secret place by her. I can only say that I'll try my best. How about this? Come back in half a year." "Half a year?" The man's voice suddenly rose. Takshu sneered. "Half a year is already very stressful. Lu Shi is no longer the young man who could be easily fooled. Now he's as shrewd as an old fox. Even the slightest abnormality will be suspected by her. If I'm exposed, the last pawn that you've placed by her side will be useless. Who will pass on her news to you in the future? Xuemei has already defected. Don't expect her to be useful." The man hesitated and struggled in his heart. He still felt that half a year was too long. Takshu continued, "She brings me with her wherever she goes now, and the county residence is usually strictly guarded. If she hadn't gone to war this time, how could I have found a chance to contact you? Half a year is stressful enough. If you think it's too long, get yourself another pawn." The man was almost choked by Taksha's words. If it was so easy to place pawns, Why were there only Takshu and Xuanmei after so many years? Xuanmei had hugged Lu Shi's thigh a long time ago and remarried. Fortunately, Xuanmei did not know any confidential information. Otherwise, how could she be alive? Takshu was different. She was cruel and merciless, but she had helped them do many confidential things. It was not easy to raise a talent, and it was even more difficult to raise a talent who could avoid Lu Shi's eyes and ears. Although Lu Shi had been depressed for a while because of the death of his beloved wife, he was still very strict with his supervision and cleanliness of the backyard. He had quietly gotten rid of all the spies he had planted. One by one, they had died a miserable death. His methods of killing were extremely cruel. He had clearly vented his anger over his wife's death on these spies. Even when Lu Shi went to Hu County, the Lu residence was still guarded by Gu Zhen and by Dai. It was still watertight. He had spent a lot of effort to protect these two pawns. He was not willing to give up on Taksha now. The man said, "All right, I'll give you half a year. You must get the method to make the blue brick." Taksha nodded. Her cold expression became a little more gentle. In the end, she asked hesitantly, "How is my sister doing now?" The man said unhappily, "She's not much worse than the Empress's life. She's doing well." "That's good." Takshu heaved a sigh of relief. Before she left, the man asked again, "Are there really no other daughters in the Lu residence?" Takshu's expression did not change. "No. Isn't the only daughter of a mistress married into the royal family?" The man muttered to himself and left with the small bag that Takshu had given him. Before he left, he did not forget to remind her, "Takshu, we've known each other for more than 10 years. You and I both know that don't be as silly as Xuanmei. We have to be loyal to our master so that we can have a good life in the future. Remember, we are the most obedient dogs of our master. We can only bark when she asks us to bark. Otherwise, we'll be barking wildly. That's mad dogs. Don't be won over by Lu Shi." After the man finished speaking, he went back into the bushes. The night wind blew, and the darkness of the night covered Takshu's strange and cold expression. "Who said that I'm loyal to your master or Lu Shi?" Chapter 521. Seriously, letting a bunch of weak women guard the city gate. Is there something wrong with the higher-ups' brains? At the south gate, the soldier guarding the gate yawned and squeezed out 2 drops of tears from the corner of his eyes. He complained lazily. His companion, who was patrolling with him, lowered his voice and said, "Don't talk nonsense. We can't afford to offend those women." "What's wrong?" The soldier raised his right eyelid lazily and said disdainfully, "I used to be a bandit. Although I've turned over a new leaf, it's not like I haven't tasted women before. They only know how to scream when they encounter something, and they're as weak as a kitten." Before the soldier turned over a new leaf, he was a bandit who robbed houses. It wasn't that he was bad by nature, but that life was too harsh. Like the youths in the village, he had no choice but to become a bandit. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to survive. There were many bandits like him who were recruited to turn over a new leaf. Now that he had become a good person and stopped committing crimes, it didn't mean that everything in the past could be written off, nor could it be treated as if nothing had happened. His companion lowered his head and thought for a while. "The other women are like that, but these, it's best not to say that." Seeing his companion's secretive look, the soldier was surprised and asked curiously, "What's so special about these women?" His companion thought for a while and said, "In short, they're different from those who only know how to cry and drag us down. The spears in their hands aren't just for show. They're all used to kill people, and they know martial arts too. Unfortunately, I heard that the higher-ups have decreed that these female soldiers can only retire from the army at the age of 24, get married, and have children. Otherwise, I really want my mother to propose marriage." The soldier almost burst out laughing. "You blockhead, you're really strange. You don't want a fragrant and soft woman, but a female worm? You're really young and don't understand the taste of women. When you're older and more knowledgeable, you'll know what a real woman is." His companion blushed at the soldier's teasing. How could he not understand the meaning behind the soldier's words? However, he still shook his head honestly and lowered his voice with a hint of embarrassment. "I think a female worm is pretty good. Let her be fierce, his companion said a little uneasily. But isn't the world different now? He heard from his brothers that the man-eating beasts of the north borderline coveted Dongqing. Say, if the wife he married met those beasts and only knew how to cry and scream, wouldn't she be pinned to the ground and gang-raped in the end? At least I have a life, but what if I get eaten? The soldier was taken aback, as if he hadn't thought of this. While they were talking, there were two female soldiers patrolling opposite them. "What's the matter?" the other side asked. The soldier replied, "Everything is normal." The two sides continued patrolling. Watching the two female soldiers leave, the soldier muttered, "They're quite decent." At this time, the battle between North and West Gate had reached its climax. After the rubble was used up, pieces of green bricks faced the Tsing-E army and smashed them down one by one. By the time the extra bricks were used up, there was already a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood beneath the city walls. Both parties were already in a killing frenzy. More and more members of the Tsing-E army climbed up the city walls, while more members of the Tsing-E army were sleeping under the city walls. The soldiers on the city walls defended the territory of the city walls with their flesh and blood. They fought for every inch of land, and the sounds of killing resounded through the clouds. Tonight was destined to be a bloody night. No one could sleep in peace. Fortunately, the previous bloody battle had depleted most of the main forces of the Tsing-E army. In the end, only 600 or 700 members of the Tsing-E army could climb up the city walls. Under Feng Jin's orderly command, they used the remaining defensive equipment to stubbornly defend. They advanced or retreated, making use of the geographical advantage of the city walls to slowly whittle down the strength of the Tsing-E army. In terms of defensive equipment, Xiangyang District did not lack it at all. However, they were fighting on two fronts, so half of the equipment was allocated to the other side. Feng Jin was tense all along. Even though he was standing at the back and commanding, there were still members of the Tsing-E army who rushed to him. Fresh blood dyed his wide sleeves and cloak red. Occasionally, severed limbs and broken bones or the heads of strangers rolled to his feet. There was almost no place on the entire city walls that was clean. Dawn had just broken. There were a few sparse stars in the dark sky. The orange morning sun shone on the world and broke through the night sky. The killing cries at the west and north gate gradually subsided. General Ping Tian did not even step down the stairs of the city walls. He was stabbed to death by a long spear. The stairs were filled with corpses. Most of them were the enemies. Occasionally, there were their comrades. At this moment, the battle at the south gate had just begun. The Tsing-E army in Maolin district was also aggressive. However, they did not launch a sneak attack in the middle of the night. Instead, they chose to launch a strong attack when the night was about to break. The number of Tsing-E army troops they brought was 2,000 more than the number at the west gate. As the soldiers at the city gates were already prepared, the first wave of sneak attacks did not cause any casualties with the wooden shields. As the leader of the Imperial Guards, Luo Yue had excellent abilities. It was just a battle to defend the city. It was not enough to make him flustered. Different from Feng Jin's meticulous arrangements, Luo Yue's command were more rigid. If Feng Jin was said to be a seemingly soft but dense net that did not leave a single gap, Luo Yue was a thick and strong shield. The former was more meticulous, while the latter was more steady. Jiang Pingji took away most of the elites, but the female battalion only took away 500 to 600 people. The number of female soldiers who stayed behind was almost a quarter of the garrison in Xiangyang district. Luo Yue heard them say that the strength of the female battalion was not bad, but he did not witness it with his own eyes. However, the reality was far better than what Luo Yue had imagined. He initially thought that they had not seen blood before. Faced with such a large battle formation, they would panic or scream in fear. In the end, they did not. He secretly lamented that Jiang Nongqin and his lord were good at training people. In his impression, the female soldiers who only knew how to cry actually had courage that did not lose to the men. They used the improved crossbows well, and their shooting accuracy was not the least bit inferior. Indeed, who would care about gender at the juncture of life and death? The female and male soldiers cooperated to load the crossbows and shoot at the attacking enemy. The soldiers who raised their shields blocked wave after wave of arrows that were shot from below the city. However, there were always stray arrows that passed through the wooden shields and injured people. They pierced into the flesh. Although it was not fatal, the injury was not light. At such a time, naturally no one could bring the injured down for treatment. They could only use brute force to pull the arrowheads out. Then they used a torn piece of cloth to bandage the wound tightly to prevent it from bleeding too much. Compared to the west and north gates, the south gate had more resources to defend the city. The crossbows stopped the enemy at a distance of 500 steps away. The Tsingyi army tried to approach the south gate with their shields, but the penetrating power of the crossbows was far more terrifying than they had imagined. However, although the crossbows were powerful, there were only more than 30 on the city walls. It was impossible to stop all the Tsingyi army. Finally, they abandoned hundreds of corpses and finally approached the blind spot of the crossbows. Chapter 522. When General Ping Tian left Jiaoping district with his troops and horses, intending to launch a sneak attack on Xianyang district, Jiang Pengji was leading 1,500 elites to deviate from their marching route and quietly sneak toward his lair. She even brought a lot of siege equipment. Looking at Jiang Pengji, who was eager to fight and excited, Qiguan Rang could only smile bitterly and say, "My lord, I don't want to go back and be scolded by Xiao Yu and Zixiao. If you're injured, it'll be hard to explain when you go back." In other words, if Jiang Pengji had the ability to ensure that she would be unscathed, she could do whatever she wanted. Jiang Pengji could not help but laugh when she heard that. She said, "What you mean by that is interesting. You make it seem like I'm going to do something bad." Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and asked Jiang Pengji with his eyes, "Isn't that considered doing something bad? If she brought Su Ku or Wei Ci, she would definitely be stopped. However, since she brought Qiguan Rang, he would not stop her." Fine. I'm doing something bad, all right?" Jiang Pengji could not help but laugh. She lowered her voice and said to Qiguan Rang, "According to what you said, I'm doing something bad by rushing in front. Then, aren't you, Qiguan Rang, a servant who watches the door for me?" As she spoke, a black shadow appeared in her line of sight. Jiaoping district was lying on the horizon, like a ferocious beast in deep sleep. It made people feel nervous for no reason. These troops were basically elite veterans with rich experience in battles. They were very familiar with how to approach their target without batting an eyelid. After about an hour, they finally approached Jiaoping district. There were very few guards on the city wall. Each of them yawned continuously. Qiguan Rang was a scholar. He could not care less about how dirty the ground was. He could only learn to hide in the dark. After looking for a long time, he realized that there were very few people on the city wall. It was obvious that the security was not strict. Jiang Pengji lay in the grass. Her eyesight and night vision were far better than ordinary people's. She asked Qiguan Rang, "Do you think there's a trap up there?" Qiguan Rang secretly rolled his eyes. If he said there was a trap, would his lord obediently guard the rear? Definitely not. The Tsingyi army led at least 5,000 people out of the city. According to the news, there are at most 7,000 Tsingyi army soldiers in Jiaoping district. In other words, there are only about 1,000 to 2,000 Tsingyi army soldiers in the city. There's so few of them, it's not even enough for one bite. Qiguan Rang said carefully. Jiang Pengji's facial expression did not change. The leader of the Tsingyi army in Jiaoping district is an extremely magnanimous person. He doesn't have any abilities, yet he dares to bring so many people with him. Isn't he afraid that his nest will be destroyed? Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and said sarcastically, "Wenzheng, don't you think so?" Qiguan Rang indicated that he could not answer this question. In terms of magnanimity, who could be more magnanimous than the lord beside him? If Su Ku and the others hadn't stopped her, she might have left a few soldiers guarding the gate and left with all her belongings. Qiguan Rang heaved a long sigh as he thought of Feng Jin, who had brought 4,000 soldiers to guard Xianyang district. He sympathized with his brother very much. When his lord had just entered Xianyang district, Qiguan Rang had guarded Xianyang district. At that time, there weren't so many city defense weapons. They relied entirely on tactics and ruthless schemes, as well as the soldiers' bravery and fearlessness. Only then did they manage to repel the Tsing-Yi army. Of course, if the Tsing-Yi army had enough rations at that time, Xiangyang district would probably be destroyed. Therefore, as someone who had been through it, Qiguan Rang could completely understand the feeling of being bullied and wanting to curse at the same time. It felt extremely good. There were hundreds of thousands of viewers who had the same opinion as Qiguan Rang. Xinbong. Trash streamer. How can a crow laugh at a pig? Reflect on yourself when you criticize others for being magnanimous. Jintian Bougie. Streamer. You're a typical example of a magistrate being allowed to do whatever he wants, but the people aren't allowed to light up the lamps. She's too overbearing. Ninja Yujing. Dear friends, you have to know that the outcome of a protagonist courting death and a cannon fodder courting death is different. Obviously, Jiang Pengji was the protagonist. Not only did she have the halo of a protagonist, but she also had powerful abilities. If she courted death, others would die. If the cannon fodder courted death, they would die. General Ping Tian was obviously such a cannon fodder. He was thinking about the delicacies in other people's pot and completely forgot that he was cooking porridge in his own pot. You're right, my lord. Qiguan Rang abandoned his moral integrity and chose to go along with Devil King Zhang's words. I have a novel idea. I don't know if I can give it a try. Jiang Pengji hid in the bushes and held a meeting with her strategist. The troops waited silently for further instructions. Qiguan Rang's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He was afraid that his lord would cause trouble again. If anything happened to her, he was really afraid that Su Ku and Wei Ci would kill him when he returned. Su Ku was still all right as he was somewhat honest, but Wei Ci was weak and black-hearted. Qiguan Rang really did not want to offend him. What idea? Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pengji waved her hand and said to him, Come closer and listen carefully. After listening, Qiguan Rang felt that he had opened the door to a new world. It turned out that attacking a city could be done this way. How dirty was his lord's heart? Even a mother river of Dongqing could not wash it clean, okay? On the other side, Li Yun, Su Ku, and the others led the remaining 2,000 troops to Maolin district at top speed. Along the way, no one dared to talk or joke around. Most of the troops were trained to march a short distance with heavy loads. Apart from Su Ku, who was a scholar and could not bear it, the rest of them looked all right. What was surprising was that the hundreds of female troops who were thought to be left behind followed closely, but their faces were pale. In comparison, Su Ku, who was panting while riding a horse, was the most useless in the entire army, because they deliberately took a detour to avoid the Tsing-Yi army in Maolin district. The entire 2,000 troops rested and reorganized in a call in the mountains. They were prepared to attack Maolin district after the Tsing-Yi army left. Suka moved his legs uncomfortably. His face was ghastly pale. Li Yun, the honest lad, saw that Suku's movements were a little strange, so he opened his mouth to ask, Your inner thighs are torn? It hurts a little when you walk, but it will be fine after applying some medicine. I have something for you, sir. Do you want it? Suku's face darkened. He noticed that the surrounding people were looking at him suspiciously. He rejected them awkwardly. No need, I'm fine. Li Yun adjusted his breathing while showing concern for Suku. Sir, you don't look well. Suku's mouth twitched. Silence was golden. Faced with such an honest lad, how can a normal person look well? I'm just worried about the Lord's side. Will there be any changes? Suka casually changed the topic. Because of her willfulness, Jiang Pengji only brought 1,500 elites and a few siege weapons. It was impossible for Suka not to worry. But thinking that the Lord had also brought troops to occupy Xianyang district, he felt that he was worrying too much. Reality proved that his Lord's thinking was not something that ordinary people could understand. Chapter 5:23. Qiguan Rang had always thought that his heart was dirty enough, but he did not expect his lord to be even dirtier. Not only did she sneak attack the enemy's lair, she even wanted to conquer Jiaoping district without expending a single soldier. With such capabilities, why didn't she ascend to heaven? Jiang Pengji glared at Qiguan Rang. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just giving it a try. Anyway, there's still plenty of time. He silently shut up, then passed an order to the soldiers behind him. He asked them to find a soldier who was fluent in the northern dialect. Not long after, an ordinary-looking soldier who could not be found in a sea of people was brought over. Chiguan Rang glanced at him. Are you usually quick-witted? Although the soldier looked very ordinary, his eyes were exceptionally spirited. One look, and one could tell that he was quick-witted. The soldier was a little puzzled, but it was rare for him to speak to someone above him. He must have performed well. The soldier smiled foolishly and said, Clever. I'm very clever. I'm not stupid at all. Chiguan Rang asked again, How clever are you? The soldier was puzzled, but he said, Very clever. My mother wants to beat me. No matter how angry she is, she will calm down as long as I speak. Chiguan Rang frowned and thought for a while. He waved at him. Come here. I have a task for you. Do it well. If you do it well, you'll be rewarded. When the soldier heard that there was a reward, his eyes lit up. He hurriedly replied, Just tell me, sir. I'll definitely do it well. Chiguan Rang said, Come closer and tell me in detail. Jiaoping district was located in a remote area. There were only 1,000 Tsing Yi army soldiers in the city. It was extremely stressful to guard the 4 city gates with such a small number of people. The Tsing Yi army was not a regular army. Those who stayed were old and weak, disabled, or those who liked to cheat. It was late at night. Many of them hugged their spears and leaned against the pilings of the wall to sleep. It was not difficult for those who were slightly better at martial arts to climb over the wall. Spring plowing had just ended, and the weather was erratic. It was slightly warmer on the whole. At night, the night wind was still bone-chilling. The people of Jiaoping district were having a hard time. They were like sheep reared by the Tsing Yi army, and they would come and pluck a layer of wool from time to time. Unfortunately, the Tsing Yi army did not treat the people well, and they did not know how to govern. They just blindly prevented the people from leaving Jiaoping district, and their methods became harsher and harsher. This caused the people's lives to become more and more miserable. Once night fell, the people would try to escape. In the beginning, the Tsing Yi army used forceful methods to deter and intimidate the people in Jiaoping district. The people were afraid that they would be in trouble, so the number of people who escaped gradually decreased. However, the increasingly difficult life tormented the people, causing them to rather risk being discovered and executed to escape. However, the city gates were tightly shut. How were they going to escape? Little did they know that in this world, money could make the devil push the millstone, and even the devil push the millstone, as long as he gritted his teeth and took out his belongings to bribe the Tsing Yi army that guarded the city gate that day. If he was lucky, he could still get out. The Tsing Yi army was just a motley crew, and they were all commoners. Who wouldn't be willing to turn a blind eye and let 1 or 2 unimportant commoners go to earn some extra money? Of course, when doing this business, he couldn't let the higher-ups know. For the Tsing Yi army that guarded the city gates, this was a lucrative job. The trivial matters in Jiaoping district had long been reported back to Xiangyang district by the spies. Jiang Pengji had been unhappy with the neighbors around her for a long time. Only by knowing oneself and the enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. She understood Jiaoping district very well. The soldier she chose was indeed a clever person. He found a secluded place and climbed over the city wall. Then he squatted near the northeast corner gate that Jiang Pengji mentioned for a quarter of an hour. As expected, he saw a few sneaky figures. He hurriedly waved his hands to stop them. They also wanted to smuggle out, but they were discovered by the soldier. How would they dare to make a fuss? Each of them was scared out of their wits. They were worried that if they were caught by the Tsing Yi army, their whole family would be beaten to death. Brother, I want to ask you something. The soldier had changed into the linen clothes of the commoners. He spoke with a northern dialect, and it was obvious that he was a local nearby. However, he lowered his voice, and it sounded a little strange. Are you also prepared to fork out money to leave the city? There were a total of 9 people in this group. There were 2 old people, 3 adult men, and 2 emaciated women. They were all carrying children who were sleeping soundly in their arms. What do you want? The leader, a strong man, glared at the soldier fiercely. He looked like he would take action if the soldier dared to make trouble and steal their money. The soldier said calmly, "Hey, don't be anxious. I don't have any bad intentions. It's just that your family is quite pitiful. Most of your life savings have been given to those Tsing-y bastards. I feel pity for you. Who are you?" The strong man did not relax. He used his body to block the soldier's line of sight. I'm from Xianyang. Look, I'm wearing real woolen clothes." As he spoke, the soldier rolled up his sleeves slightly and pulled out the cuffs of the layer of woolen undershirt that was used to keep out the cold. He sized up the crowd with a disdainful look. "This outfit costs a few hundred coins. Do you think I care about your little money? To be honest, I escaped from here last winter. At that time, I was short of money, so I didn't bring my mother with me. This time, while the Tsing-y army is about to collapse, I sneaked in ahead of time and brought my mother to Xianyang to enjoy a comfortable life." The soldier's words were convincing. He was also a complete actor. He did not even blush when he lied and boasted. Most of the people in Jiaoping district had heard of woolen clothes, but they had never seen them before. However, the strong man's attention was not on the snow-white woolen sleeves, but on something else. "What do you mean the Tsing-y army has collapsed?" The soldier was startled and said, "You don't know? The Tsing-y bastards took the people to war. We don't know when they'll return. There are thousands of bastards in the district now, but most of them are still sleeping like pigs. I reckon that even if we cut off their heads now, they probably won't wake up. Otherwise, how did little brother crawl in? I think it's easy for you guys to flirt with the Tsing-y bastards of the city gate. There's no need to pay. I stopped you to ask where the people in Dogtail Alley went. I couldn't find my mother for a long time." The strong man thought for a while and asked his wife. He said to the soldier, "The houses in that alley have been requisitioned by those bastards. The people living there have been driven to the north of the city. Your mother should be in the north of the city." The soldier nodded happily. "All right, thank you, big brother. I'll bring my mother to Xianyang to enjoy a comfortable life." However, before he could take a step, he was stopped by the strong man. The man asked, "Little brother, you said those Tsing-y bastard were taken to war." Chapter 524. The soldier vividly portrayed a talkative and warm-hearted young man. While he was enthusiastically concerned about the family, he complained about how tough his life was before he went to Xianyang and how good his life was after he went there. Indeed, if his life was not good, how could he afford to wear woolen clothes that cost hundreds of copper coins? After rambling for a while, the soldier said casually, "By the way, brothers, I'll share my experience with you as someone who has been through it. If you're planning to go to Xianyang, I suggest you go to Qinggan district first. It's nearer." Qinggan district? The strong man had completely let down his guard. He couldn't wait to know more about the outside world. He frowned and said suspiciously, "I heard that Qinggan district has become a ghost. The Tsing-y bastards are even more inhuman than the ones here. If our family goes there, it's no different from looking for the king of hell to reincarnate." The soldier was also startled for a moment. Then he let out a hey and slapped his forehead with his hand, smiling awkwardly. "Look at my bad memory. I forgot to tell you that the bastards in Qinggan district have been taken care of." The soldier lowered his voice, and there was a tinge of excitement in his words. "The person who took care of these bastards is the one in Xianyang district. He's amazing. He took care of them in half a day." The few men's eyes lit up when they heard that. They squeezed the soldier's hand excitedly. "Really?" The soldier nodded heavily and said, "It's true. How can it be fake? It's not easy to get a household registration in Xianyang district. Those newly built houses can't be bought no matter how hard they try. Brothers, go to Qinggan district and wait. Imagine what Xianyang district looked like in the past. It was also occupied by the Tsing-y bastards. Now, it's like a paradise on earth. It's so beautiful." The strong man followed the soldier's lead and asked, "Do you think that Qinggan district will be as good as Xianyang district in the future?" The soldier nodded affirmatively. "Of course. I heard that the magistrate of Xianyang district is short of manpower. I plan to settle down and find a good job there in the future. Last year, I didn't make it in time. Everything was almost built when I went there. I heard that those hardworking families can earn enough money to buy a house. They don't have to worry about food and drink. The soldiers could praise Xianyang district for hours without stopping, but now is not the time to be chattering and showing off. The soldier was beaming with joy as he spoke, as if Xianyang district was really a paradise on earth. Of course, for these people who were tortured by war and poverty, it was no longer as simple as a paradise on earth. The soldier said a lot of things and muttered regretfully, "It's a pity that I don't know when the magistrate of Xianyang district will come here. If he comes here, maybe I don't have to take my mother away." Sigh. Look at my mouth. I can't stop talking. Brother, please don't laugh at me. It's getting late. I have to take advantage of the dark to pick up my mother. The soldier's careless words struck the hearts of a few strong men. No one would want to leave their homeland unless they really couldn't live anymore. Not to mention that the price of leaving was emptying their family savings. Now that there was a great opportunity in front of them, if they could grasp it, they would prosper in the future. The rumors of Xianyang district that they had heard in the past surfaced in their minds, and their hearts thumped wildly. The few brothers looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. "Big brother, what do you think? Do you want to do it?" "I want to do it. My parents are old. My wife just gave birth to a baby, and the baby is still young. How can they withstand the torment? Why don't we do it and capture all those bastards, then send someone to Chen to invite those lords over? Otherwise, how are we going to live?" The third person also agreed, but one of the women was carrying a child who was sleeping soundly and looked worried. But what if those Tsing-y bastards come back? The soldier's heart skipped a beat. He secretly thought that this woman was going to ruin things. He looked as if he had just understood and smiled sheepishly. "Sister-in-law is right. You guys better not take the risk. Run away if you can. We're not saints. It's enough as long as we can control ourselves. I see that the uncles and aunties aren't young anymore. Big brothers, find some helpers and beat up those bastards at the city gate. Run away if you can. This place is deep, and it's not easy to run away." The few men looked hesitant and struggled. The soldier's heart stirred, and he added fuel to the fire. "Big brothers, you guys have reminded me." The man in the prime of life asked, "Remind what?" The soldier said matter-of-factly, "Offer the city. If I persuade the villagers and this matter succeeds, won't it be a great merit?" As soon as he said this, the three men's expressions changed abruptly, and the greed in their hearts gained the upper hand. Yes, if they were to offer Jiaoping district, it would be a great merit. Why didn't they think of it in such a short time? They were almost delayed by their own women and pushed away such a good thing for no reason. Thinking of this, he glared fiercely at the woman who spoke, causing her to shrink her neck in fear. Fearing that this merit would be taken away by the soldier, the three men first said with embarrassment that they had left something at home and asked him to take care of it. Of course, to be on the safe side, the two older brothers left, leaving the youngest brother to delay the soldier. The soldier secretly heaved a long sigh of relief. It was not easy to fool people these days. His master Qiguan said that if there was no movement in the city at dawn, the elites outside would attack Jiaoping district. Now that it was nighttime, if they moved quickly, they should be able to catch up. Seeing the family return, the soldier who was hiding in the dark frowned and secretly rejoiced that he was lucky. Looking at the big brother who held him back, the soldier's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to be an enthusiastic and simple-minded fool. Outside the city, Jiang Pengji sleepily yawned. Qiguan Rang looked up at the moonlight, and he was somewhat uncertain. Could a single soldier really instigate the people in the city to rebel? If Jiaoping district has sufficient troops, the people who are used to being oppressed and threatened will most likely not have the guts to rebel. However, there are only 1,000 people in the Tsing-y army in the city, and it's the time when everyone is sleepy and asleep. It's a dark and windy night, the time to commit murder and arson. While they were talking, a conspiracy was brewing in Jiaoping district. The oppressed people formed groups of 3 to 5. They held their own kitchen knives for cooking, chopping firewood, carrying poles for carrying firewood, clubs for washing clothes. They took whatever they could and rushed madly to the territory of the Tsing-y army, which they knew was the territory of the Tsing-y army. Most of the members of the Tsing-E army who were guarding the place were already drowsy, and some directly entered their dreams to look for the Lord of Zhou. Chapter 525. Many members of the Tsing-E army were hacked or hammered to death in their sleep. Some were lucky enough not to be beaten to death. They were just tied up with ropes and stuffed in their mouths to prevent them from making any noise and waking up the other members of the Tsing-E army. In the beginning, these people were still anxious and uneasy. They only had some courage when they acted with people they were familiar with. However, after 1 or 2 times, they saw that the beasts who once bullied them were no longer angry. The little fear in their hearts dissipated. Just as they saw, the members of the Tsing-E army were not made of copper and iron. They would still die if their heads were chopped off. This rebellion plot lasted for a whole hour. The heavy night sky gradually faded, and there were a few more traces of green and white. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and sat in the grass. Her back was straight, her head was slightly lowered, and her eyes were closed. Others thought she was closing her eyes to take a nap, but in fact, she was sleeping. Yes, she was sleeping. Qiguan Rang looked at his lord in amazement. She had maintained this sleeping position for more than 2 hours. What are you surprised about? Jiang Pengji suddenly opened her eyes and said calmly, "As a qualified general, you should develop this habit. No matter what environment you are in, you should be able to fall asleep quickly and conserve your energy. Don't make a fuss about nothing." She woke up and slept as she pleased. Jiang Pengji looked up at the sky and frowned slightly. "Is there still no movement in Jiaoping district?" Qiguan Rang said, "I've already sent scouts to gather information. They should be back soon." At that moment, Jiang Pengji glanced at the city wall in the distance. The guards who should have been standing on it had disappeared. She said, "It should be about time. Let's put on an act until the end. Let's retreat for a distance before coming back." Qiguan Rang was startled. Jiang Pengji said matter-of-factly, "Otherwise, when people leave the city and see a group of us rubbing our hands together, won't they know that there's something fishy going on? They offered the city, and we passively took it over. Jiaoping district was not seized by us, understand? It was seized, and others rushed to deliver it." The two sounded different. Qiguan Rang almost choked. Why didn't he know that his lord had such a shameless side to her? Thinking of something, Qiguan Rang said, "If that's the case, there won't be a chance for the lord to display his skills." Jiaoping district was conquered without bloodshed, and it was because the others had rushed to help. Naturally, Jiang Pengji did not have to charge and break through enemy lines. She said, "Look at what you're saying. It's as if I'm a bloody warrior. People would die in war. Even if it was an overwhelming victory, it was hard to guarantee that there would be no casualties. It would be best if they could take over Jiaoping district peacefully. Why are you fighting? You're harming the harmony of the world." Jiang Pengji spoke righteously. Not only did Qiguan Rang think she was shameless, but the audience who stayed up late to watch the live stream also ridiculed her. Yuantong Courier. He, the biggest joke of the year. The host is a pacifist. Zhongtong Express Post. I think there's nothing wrong with the host's words. The enemy's life is not life, but the life of one's family is different. Shintong Express. Sigh. The streamer must have forgotten how much she wanted to fight on the battlefield. I could feel the resentment emanating from her even through the screen. Now, he turned around and said that he was a pacifist. Didn't he feel ashamed? In fact, Jiang Pengji was indeed a pacifist, but her peace was to stop killing by killing. She killed the enemy. She did not care how many enemies died, but she would avoid unnecessary losses on her side if possible. Before Qiguan Rang could speak, Jiang Pengji said, "According to the time and distance, after we take over Jiaoping district, if we take shortcuts, we can rush back to Xiangyang district and attack the rear of the Tsing army. I'm worried that we can't defend Xiangyang district after taking over Jiaoping district without bloodshed. The loss of troops on Jiang Pengji's side was almost zero. The biggest advantage of taking over peacefully was that she did not need to spend time to appease the people. She could even temporarily recruit a group of people to help defend Jiaoping district. She could bring 1,000 troops to aid Xianyang district. This was the fastest way she could think of. Qiguan Rang frowned and asked, "How can this be? 4,000 troops are indeed tight, but Huayu and Coach Luoyue are not easy to deal with. The defense in the city is perfect. It's almost impossible for a motley crew like the Tsingyi army to take over Xianyang district." "You said it's almost impossible, not absolutely." Jiang Pengji's face darkened as she said, "Wen Zheng, do you still remember when I left Hejian and followed my father to Shangjing? Why did I entrust the troops to you to take care of them?" Qiguan Rang did not understand. He carefully recalled the memory of that time and suddenly thought of something. His expression changed slightly. "My lord, you mean? Lady Takshu?" Qiguan Rang was stunned. That year, Jiang Pengji sneaked into Wei Yuan's residence late at night and entrusted the trifling matters of the troops to Qiguan Rang. Between her words, she hinted that there was a dirty person around her. At that time, Qiguan Rang did not know who she was until she left Xuanmei behind and took Takshu away. According to his understanding of Jiang Pengji, the more dangerous something was, the more she liked to keep an eye on it. Later, when Su Kum married Xuanmei, Qiguan Rang was even more certain of his guess. "My lord is really muddle-headed. Since you're sure that there's something wrong with Takshu, why don't you?" Qiguan Rang looked anxious. Takshu's identity had yet to be revealed. If she did something in Xianyang district, it would be hard to guard against it. Jiang Pengji raised her eyes lazily and said, "Wen Zheng, don't worry. Although I'm a little risky, I'm not fooling around. There's something wrong with Takshu, and it's a big problem. Do you understand that she has more than one master behind her back? After so many years, I've found out about one of them, but I've never had a clue about the other. It's better to keep her by my side than to plot in the dark. But if she takes advantage of this crisis and lets the Tsingyi army enter the city, she won't do that." Jiang Pengji sneered and said with absolute certainty, "Before achieving a certain goal, she won't do anything to hurt me. Perhaps, more than anyone else, she hopes that I can gain a foothold in the north." Qiguan Rang was speechless. His intelligent brain felt inadequate. Suddenly, he said irritably, "Isn't Lady Takshu the personal maid that the old master prepared for you? How could she be taken advantage of?" Jiang Pengji said meaningfully, "Yes, my father prepared her, but she can't handle her long hands. If she told Qiguan Rang that there was something wrong with Sun Miai, he would probably go crazy. What kind of luck does my father have? There's something wrong with the two people he arranged." Tisk. As they were talking, the tightly shut city gate of Jiaoping district opened. A group of more than 100 people sneaked out of the city before dawn. About half an hour later, the two groups of people met on the way. The people were trembling with fear. Jiang Pengji looked solemn and reported her origins in a low voice. "I'm the district magistrate of Xianyang district, Lu Shi. Who are you and where are you from?" "Lu Shi? The district magistrate of Xianyang district?" The people were in an uproar and they discussed animatedly. At that moment, a rather old leader slowly stepped out of the ranks and bowed with his hands folded in front. "We are the people of Jiaoping district." "The people of Jiaoping district? Why are you here?" Chapter 5:26. As the old man knelt, the hundreds of people behind him also knelt on the ground, begging. Each of them was sallow and emaciated, and their skin had an unhealthy color to it. It was as if they would faint if they said two more words. The audience in the streaming room could not bear to see this. They could not help but send bullet screens to advise Jiang Pengji to stop putting on a show and quickly accept these people. "Yibio, streamer, they look so pitiful. Didn't you say that the common people are like duckweed in troubled times? They're begging you so much. Just accept them. Anyway, this is also one of your plans. It's not good to let them kneel." Jiaging Yizhang. "Tisk, that's why I said the streamer's heart is really dirty. It's obvious that she covets Jiaoping district. She secretly instigated people to kill the Tsingyi army, who stayed behind, and begged her to accept Jiaoping district. TSK. She gets all the good things. Is there any justice?" Wu to Wuchi. This scene reminds me of a TV series I used to watch. The situation was similar. The refugees were begging the protagonist. At that time, he felt that it was a little funny. After all, the extras didn't act well. The refugees didn't look like refugees, nor did they look like they were begging. It was more like they were watching the protagonist's monkey show, which made people feel awkward. Looking at this scene, to be honest, I felt that I needed to calm down and calm down. Qitian Shuangbi, you guys are thinking too much. Is the streamer the kind of person who likes to put on airs? The facts proved that Jiang Pingji was not. At least she would not make the people kneel on the ground and kowtow until their heads were broken. All of you, stand up and speak. If you have any grievances, feel free to speak up. If I, Lu Shi, can help everyone settle it, I will definitely not refuse. Jiang Pengji dismounted from the horse and helped the few people who were kneeling in front of her up. It's deep in the night and the ground is moist. Get up and talk. The leading old man had a high EQ. Naturally, he wouldn't kneel on the ground and say things like, if you don't listen to us, we won't get up. This wasn't begging for mercy. It was another form of blackmail. So when Jiang Pengji helped him up, he stood up. This old man was quite prestigious in Jiaoping district. When the other commoners saw that he had gotten up, they helped each other up from the ground. The old man bowed again and said, Magistrate Liu, where are you preparing to go with your troops? Jiang Pengji said, I heard that Cheng'an, Jiaoping, and Maolin districts are plagued by bandits from the Tsingy army. The people have no way of making a living, so I came over to clear them out. The members of the Tsingy army in Chang'an district have all been killed. They originally wanted to reorganize in peace. Not long ago, they heard that the Tsingy army in Jiaoping district had gathered their troops and horses and left in full strength. They did not know what their purpose was. That's why I brought some troops over to check out the situation. The old man was overjoyed. His eyes brimmed with tears as he said excitedly, What a coincidence! Magistrate Liu didn't know that the bandits in black had indeed left Jiaoping district, leaving only about 1,000 people to guard the county. I've heard that Magistrate Liu is noble and righteous. He led the villagers to get rid of the evil bandits in green. I'm about to rush to Chang'an district to look for Magistrate Liu. If those evil bandits find out about this, I'm afraid they won't let the people of the city go. Jiang Pengji seemed to have finally understood. Is it because of this that the old man asked me? Jiang Pengji asked. The old man raised his hand to wipe the hot tears from the corners of his eyes. He said exactly, I only hope that Magistrate Liu is benevolent and righteous. He can protect the innocent people of Jiaoping district so that they won't be harassed by the evil bandits in green. If the county magistrate agrees, this old man can die in peace. Jiang Pengji looked hesitant. The old man's heart was in his throat. Not long after, her eyes became very determined. Since the villagers love me so much, how can I let you down? Jiang Pengji said. When the old man heard the good news, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. His pale face was flushed. Life is like a drama. It all depends on one's acting skills. Watching his lord's perfect performance, even a shameless person like Qiguan Rang was secretly ashamed of her. His lord was so shameless that he could rest assured. In fact, it was not that the old man did not suspect Jiang Pengji's identity. However, she had a noble demeanor. Her face was handsome and upright. The troops behind her were strong and powerful. The clothes that the troops wore were clean and tidy. Their vital parts were covered with leather armor. The weapons they carried were of superior quality. The old man was not ignorant. Just by looking at the lineup, he believed 80% of it. He tested Jiang Pengji's attitude toward Jiaoping district. He saw that she truly pitied the suffering of the people. She spoke eloquently about various methods of disaster relief and saving the people. He thought that the standard of the son of a top aristocratic family was only as good as hers. The old man could not pick out any mistakes. The more he talked, the more satisfied he was. The old man was a rare, intellectual, and cultured person in Jiaoping district. He was a good teacher. Some children from poor families came to him to study. He would also reduce or exempt their tuition fees at his discretion. He had a very good heart. He acknowledged that Jiang Pengji was the legendary young district magistrate Liu who could create miracles and love the people like his own children. The other people also believed her with relief. Qiguan Rang led them into the city. Looking at the open city gate of Jiaoping district, he fanned himself with his feather fan. His lord was too capable. He always felt that as a counselor, he was facing the dilemma of being laid off and unemployed. They welcomed him all the way to the district headquarters of Jiaoping district. The place had already been occupied by the people. The Tsingyi army could also capture and kill them. Jiang Pengji sat calmly on the seat of honor. General Ping Tian of Jiaoping district did not expect that the owner of the nest had already changed hands after they left for just half a day. Outside, the morning light was slightly intoxicating. So far, out of the 4 districts of Fengyi County, 3 districts were already in her hands. Malan district would probably be hers soon. Liyun, Su Ku, and the others really did not disappoint Jiang Pengji's high expectations. They took advantage of the night to launch a surprise attack on Malan district and broke through the city gate. The defense of Malan district was even weaker than that of Jiaoping district. There were only 2 or 3 guards on the city gate. Liyun drew his bow and knocked an arrow onto the city gate. He shot through the guards on the city wall. With a good start, the morale was greatly boosted. In comparison, Malan district did not even manage to form a decent attack. The resistance was even weaker and insignificant. The battle was like a hot knife through butter. Using the ladder to climb up the city wall, Liyun took the lead and rushed to the front. Wherever his silver spear passed, the enemy's corpses were strewn on the spot. Su Ku was well versed in the ways to strike the local morale. Perhaps it could be said that he had become shameless after hanging out with Jiang Pengji for a long time. He ordered the troops to attack forcefully while shouting loudly. The Tsingyi army's destiny is near. The entire army is defeated and fleeing. During this period, reinforcements arrived one after another. However, faced with the tyrannical siege chariots, improved crossbows, and ballistae, the Tsingyi army charged in batches and died in batches. In addition, the words shouted by the troops caused the Tsingyi army's morale to hit rock bottom. They no longer had the will to fight. The Tsingyi army was just a motley crew. They had lost their backbone and their morale was low. The number of Tsingyi army in Maolan district was pitifully small. The combat power that they could exert as a whole was even more pitiful. In just half a day, they had already occupied the entire Maolan district. Compared to the crisis in Xiangyang district, the sneak attack and siege battle in Jiaoping district and Maolan district was like a small game. Chapter 5:27. Feng Jin was probably the only one who knew if he was going to explode. He turned his gaze back to Xiangyang district. The Tsingyi army at the west and north gates had been completely defeated. Some were dead and some were injured. Many of the Tsingyi army saw that they had lost the upper hand. They panicked and ran away, leaving thousands of corpses behind them. Looking at the mess on the ground, Feng Jin raised his hand to wipe his face with a solemn expression. He wiped away the blood on his face. He asked the soldier in a hoarse voice, "How's the situation at the south gate?" The sky gradually turned from black to greenish-white. The sun rose from the horizon and dispersed the darkness. Looking at the sky, the battle at the south gate should have already started. He just didn't know the situation. The soldier panted heavily. The man said, "The battle at the south gate is in a stalemate. General Luo is leading his men to resist." Feng Jin looked at the city gate that was blocked by bricks with pity. If he had enough men around him, why would he need to block the city gate? If he didn't block the city gate, he could send a team with high mobility to harass the Tsingyi army from the back and attack their morale. Both sides wouldn't have fought for so long. The defense line of the city wall was almost broken by the Tsingyi army. This made Feng Jin rather vexed. He glanced at the crowd and said, "The wounded should all rest. Except for those guarding the city gate, the rest should leave the city with me." After blocking the west and north gates, they could still go out from the east gate. They could outflank the Tsingyi army from the back and harass them. As long as the south gate was strong, the Tsingyi army couldn't take it down after a long time, and the back was harassed many times. Their morale would definitely plummet. A soldier was covered in blood. He looked like a bloody man and was in a terrible state. He stopped Feng Jin. "Sir, you mustn't. You just need to tell us what to do. There's no need to risk leaving the city." Feng Jin said resolutely, "I'm not powerless. I can protect myself. Soldiers, there's no need to say more." The soldiers were physically strong. The high-intensity training in the military camp was not just for show. After a night of fierce fighting, they still had energy. However, Feng Jin was the son of an aristocratic family who lived an exquisite life. His body was better than ordinary people, but compared to these rough men, he was still a lot weaker. Now, even he could grit his teeth and say to continue fighting. The other soldiers naturally had high morale and were eager to fight. The situation at the South Gate was slightly better than Feng Jin's side. Relatively speaking, it was easier to defend. Even though the Tsing-Yi army at the South Gate had more people than the North and West Gates, they did not have as many siege weapons. Without sufficient siege weapons, the losses of forcibly attacking a city would be quite terrifying. Luo Yue was also an experienced person. His defense was airtight. It made it difficult for the Tsing-Yi army below to move an inch. Even so, the soldiers on the city wall were exhausted. There were always soldiers who were shot by arrows. If they were lucky, they would only be lightly injured. If they were unlucky, they would lose their lives. However, no one had the time to mourn. They could only focus on dealing with the enemy. Just as Jiang Pengji had said, there were only the living and the dead on the battlefield. There was no distinction between men and women. Looking at the tacit cooperation of the troops, Luo Yue felt a little emotional. He gradually agreed with the women's battalion that his lord had established. If all the women stayed behind to support their husbands and raise their children, it would indeed be a waste of nearly half of the human resources. After going through rigorous training, they were able to fight on the battlefield with weapons in hand. Their performance was no worse than that of the male soldiers. In today's world, women and children were seen as a vulnerable group and needed protection. However, most of the men could not even protect themselves. How could they protect them? Even if Li Yue's views made him feel that women should not go to the battlefield, his rationality told him that this was not wrong. If others could not protect them, why couldn't they work hard to protect themselves? 10,000 troops were more than enough to defend Xiangyang District. But what about Chang'an District, Malan District, and Jiaoping District? It was almost a fantasy to rely on 10,000 troops to defend a district. It could be predicted that after conquering the other 3 districts, it was imperative to expand the troops. However, the North had experienced a series of natural and man-made disasters. There was a huge loss of young and strong men. When the time came, it was unknown how many soldiers they could recruit. If there were more female soldiers, it would indeed greatly relieve the pressure on the military camp. With these thoughts in his mind, Luo Yue continued to command calmly. He thought that there would be a stalemate for a while. Unexpectedly, there was a sudden commotion from the rear of the Tsing-Yi army. The originally orderly attack instantly became a mess. Using the height of the city wall, Luo Yue could see the movement from afar. His eyes lit up and his heart flashed with ecstasy. Soldiers, the Tsing-Yi army at the north and west gates have all been killed. He raised his arm and shouted. The troops seemed to have been injected with a shot of adrenaline. Joy flashed across their originally tired faces. The north and west gates had already won. Everyone knew that Xiangyang district was attacked from both front and back. While the troops at the south gate defended against the Tsing-Yi army, they were afraid that their rear would be breached by the enemy. Now, Luo Yue told them that the rear was safe. They only needed to defeat the enemy at the front. How could they not be excited? The morale of their troops rose again and again. The Tsing-Yi army's morale continued to decline. Feng Jin led the troops to charge forward and make a detour to harass them. The city gate was impregnable. The Tsing-Yi army attacked for a long time without success. Behind them, there were cavalry harassing them. After a few times, the morale of the Tsing-Yi army had already plummeted. They were not in the mood to fight at all. Their defeat was irreversible. No matter how their leader shouted, the Tsing-Yi army still fled in all directions. The attack below the city gate became weaker and weaker. They were unable to pose a threat to the city gate. Feng Jin originally wanted to lead the troops to chase after them. However, when he thought of the current defensive strength of Xianyang District, he could only give up this tempting idea. Luoyue wiped the bloodstains on his face. He bowed to Feng Jin and said, "Thank you for rushing over to help." The battle at the south gate lasted for more than 2 hours. However, the battle at the north and west gates started at 4 in the morning. Moreover, it was a battle at night. It consumed a lot of energy. Looking at Feng Jin, he must have led the troops to help the south gate right after the battle ended. If not for that, even if Luoyue had the confidence to defend the south gate, he would have to use up a lot of defensive equipment. Feng Jin took some time to catch his breath. He raised his hand to help Luoyue up. He said, "Coach Luoyue, you don't have to thank me. This is what I should do." Luoyue looked at the direction in which the Tsing-Yi army fled in resentment. He said fiercely, "It's a pity that they escaped." Generally speaking, when the defeated side fled and lost the will to fight, it was a good opportunity for the victorious side to expand their victory. Now that he saw the remnants of the Tsing-Yi army leave, Luoyue naturally felt bad. Feng Jin said, "It's okay. This debt will be repaid one day." Little did they know that the Tsing-Yi army that they said escaped by luck were very unlucky. Chapter 528. She left Qiguan Rang behind in Jiaoping District. She had the final say in everything. At his command, Dabai sprinted off into the distance, taking the lead as fast as he could. The Tsing-Yi army in Maolin District lost their morale. They fled pathetically and were utterly defeated. After they ran for a distance, a few chieftains began to organize their men. Naturally, they moved slowly. When they managed to organize more than half of the defeated soldiers, they would face a new disaster. A small chieftain spat on the ground and said unhappily, "What do you mean by Xianyang District is empty of troops? F***CK. Does this look like it's empty of troops? It's harder to chew than a bone. Not only is it hard to chew, but it's also hard to chew. We suffered a huge loss this time." The accomplice beside him sat on the ground and wiped his face with both hands. He said fiercely, "We'll remember this today. We'll make those people in Xianyang District pay the price in the future. They made us suffer such a huge loss. We can't let it go easily." There were also some who looked into the distance dejectedly. No one knew what they were thinking. In the distance, the Tsing-Yi army gathered in 2s and 3s. Each of them was hunchbacked and had ashen faces. They looked like defeated roosters. There was no valiant and high-spirited aura on them. It made people feel unhappy and secretly scolded them for being a bunch of good-for-nothings. Some of the small chieftains were very unhappy with these soldiers who swayed according to the situation. It was just a defeat. Was there need to be like this? Weren't they still alive? As long as they were alive, there would be a day when they would make a comeback. These useless people ran away faster than anyone else when they saw that the situation was not good. Now we'll organize our men and return to Maolin District first before making plans. They originally wanted to take advantage of the situation. Who knew that not only did they not take advantage of the situation, they were also counterattacked. It was really embarrassing. They could not covet the fat piece of meat that was Xianyang District. Now, they had to bring their men back first to prevent the rear from being empty for too long. The leader of the Tsing-Yi army then remembered that there was a shortage of manpower in his backyard. However, he was not very worried. Anyway, Maolin District had been exploited cleanly. There was no profit to be reaped. The nearby Tsing-Yi army did not even look at it. Why would they covet it? However, they all forgot that the other Tsing-Yi army would indeed not covet it. However, it did not mean that Jiang Pengji was not tempted. Now, the 4 districts of Fengyi District were in her hands. She was now the district magistrate of Xianyang District in name, but in reality, she was the chief of Fengyi District. Not to mention Dongqing. Even in other countries, was there a county chief younger than her? Jiang Pengji was completely confident that within a year, Fengyi County would be revitalized and prosperous once again. After Fengyi District was settled, the next step would be the entire Wanzhou. The members of the Tsing Yi army who had gathered were completely unaware of the impending danger. They sat on the ground in twos and threes, their stomachs rumbling with hunger. The weapons in their hands had already been abandoned when they escaped. Hungry and tired, many of them simply found a place to sleep. Looking at the disorderly Tsing Yi army, a few leaders were so angry that their faces and necks turned red. They wished they could whip these people to wake them up. There are actually no pursuers coming from Xiangyang district. A small leader opened his mouth in surprise. The other person was slightly more knowledgeable and replied, "They didn't go out of the city to pursue them. It's most likely because there aren't enough people in the city to hold them back." The leader said, "It's men and Haddon. It's hard to deal with them when they don't have enough men. What would happen if they had enough men? Don't boost others' morale and belittle your own. Maybe they think there's no need to chase. Even if they don't have enough men in the city, can you break in?" His companion was speechless. They looked at each other in silence, helplessness in their eyes. It was a good thing that the enemy did not chase after them. Tsing Yi army had more time to organize their men. Just as they heaved a sigh of relief, a member of the Tsing Yi army scrambled over to report. "General, the enemy is coming from afar." What? The enemy was chasing after them? The leaders of the Tsing Yi army were shocked. One of them, a strong man with a dark face, asked, "Enemy? How many?" The pitiful member of the Tsing Yi army stuttered. "The enemy is moving very fast. We can't be sure of their numbers." "Useless. What's the use of your eyes?" The strong man with a dark face angrily grabbed the man's collar. He lifted him up and threw him on the ground. The member of the Tsing Yi army rolled twice in the mud. He fell until he was dizzy and saw stars. "I'll go take a look." The member of the Tsing Yi army snorted. He strode to the place where he could see the enemy. He didn't know if he didn't see, but he was shocked when he saw. Indeed, as the member of the Tsing Yi army said, the enemy was moving very fast. They were only a few hundred meters away from them. Behind them, there was a thick cloud of dust. It was like the sound of horse hooves. It was impossible to determine the size of the troops chasing after them. However, there were hundreds of enemies running out from the cloud of dust. There were at least 3,000 pursuers. The other side had 3,000 victorious troops, valiant and high-spirited. Although their side still had nearly 4,000 men, they were all exhausted and had no battle experience at all. If the two sides were to clash, they would have no chance of victory. They could only experience the feeling of being utterly defeated once again. At that moment, the leaders couldn't help but want to retreat. They wanted to escape as soon as possible. As long as there's life, there's hope. As for the members of the Tsing Yi army on the ground, what did their lives have to do with them? On the other side, Jiang Pengji was leading 500 people to charge forward. The remaining 300 people came out in batches from the cloud of dust. She made use of this camp to create the illusion of a large army chasing after them. In reality, she only got a few soldiers to chop a few trees. Then she dragged the branches and ran back and forth on the ground, raising a thick cloud of dust. There were many flaws in this plan, but it could deceive the Tsing Yi army for a while. The audience in the streaming room saw that she was so cunning. They all ridiculed her. The goose sells straw shoes. By the way, when you used this plan to deceive people, did you think about Lord Zhang Fei's feelings? Ergo, wu deo, sigh. It's rare for Lord Zhang Fei to be smart for once. His plan was plagiarized by the streamer. I'm upset. Of course, the crux of the problem was not the plan, but the deception. As long as they were deceived, based on their dispirited mentality after suffering a defeat, the possibility of them fighting again was extremely small. Even if they fought, their combat power was not enough. Jiang Pingji was completely confident that she could lead 700 to 800 people to surround and annihilate the 3,000 to 4,000 members of the Tsing Yi army. The pursuers are here. Everyone get up. The pursuers are here. Run away quickly. There were loud shouts. Many members of the Tsing Yi army woke up from their sleep. When they heard that there were pursuers, their bodies had already reacted one step ahead of their minds. Run. The further the better. Most of the members of the Tsing Yi army were running blindly. One could imagine how little resistance Jiang Pengji encountered. White excitedly increased its speed. The Tsingyi army was just a tired and defeated army. How could they outrun it? Some members of the Tsingyi army saw that they could not escape, so they simply turned around and wanted to fight to the death. They did not expect that they could not even get close to it. White raised its front hooves high and rewarded them with a hoof. It hit their chests. They heard the sound of bones breaking. One by one, they fell to the ground, spitting out blood and breathing weakly. Jiang Pengji waved the sharp spear in her hand. Her moves were very simple. Every move and style was bound to reap lives. Wherever White passed, the person and the horse cooperated well with each other. Chapter 529. Mr. Qiguan, we've really tried our best. The troops who were charging behind Jiang Pengji watched as their lord left in a cloud of dust. They could only eat dirt at the back. One could imagine the despair in their hearts. Qiguan Rang was left behind in Jiaoping district. He secretly instructed many troops to keep a close eye on their lord and not let her be too reckless. Even a few strategists could not stop their lord. How could a group of small soldiers like them keep a close eye on her? Killing could make people lose all rationality. The troops behind them were in high spirits. Only a few hundred of them could chase after thousands of members of the Tsingyi army and kill them. The latter only cared about fleeing in all directions. They could not organize any effective defense. No matter how the leaders threatened them, the members of the Tsingyi army only cared about running for their lives. Jiang Pengji looked at their performance and snorted contemptuously. Her hands did not stop moving. After killing for a while, there were hundreds of corpses along the way. White's fur was already scarlet. Jiang Pengji then shouted loudly, "Malin district has already been conquered. You'll be throwing your lives away if you run back. Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who resist will be killed without mercy." What? Malin district has already been conquered? Under the influence of the environment, the leaders of the Tsingyi army also knew that the situation was hopeless. If they did not escape, they would die. They broke into a run, but they did not expect that their old nest had already been destroyed. They were still thinking of going back to regroup and take revenge in the future. Now that they had lost their territory and foundation, how could they make a comeback? Disheartened, many members of the Tsingyi army gave up on escaping and resisting. There were still some who chose to continue struggling. At that moment, the members of the Tsingyi army who were running at the front heard a faint battle cry. They took a closer look and saw that the enemy troops were also charging towards them. There was a blockade in front and pursuers behind. The members of the Tsingyi army could not escape even if they had wings. In the blink of an eye, a glaring silver light flashed before their eyes. There was only a red bloodstain left between their brows. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound. Their bodies fell forward due to inertia. Then they fell to the ground with a loud bang. They fell on the muddy grass with a dull thud. "Kill!" Li Yun's words were concise and comprehensive. His voice was low and stern, causing one to involuntarily feel invigorated and have goosebumps. The audience in the live streaming room had a wider field of vision. From afar, they could see the Tsingyi army's abnormal movements in front of them. Their fleeing formation was in a mess, as if they were hindered by something. They zoomed in to take a look. What the F***? That white horse with a silver spear. Isn't that Hanmei? Tian monthly tickets break, 2,000. Super tacit understanding. My husband is coming. Well, wait, Qigong. That's too much. Hanmei's husband is so handsome that I can't close my legs. Hanmei on the battlefield can't get enough of him. Gossipy since I was young. That's right. Hanmei on the battlefield is like a Prince Charming. The screen is a little dirty. Let me lick it. Puffed. No. Speaking of which, why am I, a man, being smitten with another man here? Oh no, I feel like I'm done for. You and shrimp sticks. You vulgar people, am I the only one who noticed that Hanmei's horse doesn't have a stirrup? Herbivorous numbers. I despise the person above. We are vulgar. Aren't you filthy? It's filthy. Ye Qingzhou. The newbie doesn't understand what's the joke about not having a stirrup. Tian Lingfeng. Come. I'll tell you what the joke is. Without a stirrup, it's good to ride a horse with a strong waist. You know, it was a hot-blooded and serious scene. The audience in the streaming room was still licking Jiang Pengji's heroic figure a second ago. In the next moment, the scene changed, and they were infatuated with Li Yun. Not only were they infatuated, they were even driving in the streaming room. TSK, this group of fickle goblins. Jiang Pengji and Li Yun obviously didn't communicate with each other. The pincer attack was just a coincidence. The Tsingy army's luck was too bad. She only brought 800 elites with her, and Li Yun didn't have many men on his side either. The two of them added up to less than 1,500 men. However, the morale of the troops on both sides was like a rainbow. Even though they were on a long journey, under the influence and motivation of the battlefield's murderous atmosphere, everyone felt that their bodies had inexhaustible energy. Li Yun was fighting for a while when he noticed Jiang Pengji and her men chasing after the Tsingy army. He was overjoyed. The Lord is just ahead. Let's go and support her. Meng Hun and Su Ku stayed behind in Maolin district to prevent other forces from launching a sneak attack. Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin led a few hundred men to prepare for a sneak attack on the Tsingy army's rear. However, they didn't expect their timing to be so coincidental. They just happened to bump into the Tsingy army, fleeing in all directions. Jiang Nongqin said in a hoarse voice, "Generals and soldiers, follow me to attack and support the Lord." Jiang Nongqin learned from Jiang Pengji and Meng Hun. She dismounted from her horse and used a short weapon, but she preferred to use a long spear when fighting on a horse. Due to the limitation of her strength, she also walked lightly and nimbly. She moved as soon as she touched the ground. As a result, the requirement of aiming the spear was stricter. Only by killing with one blow would her chances of survival on the battlefield be higher. Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin had fought several times. They had a tacit understanding. Both of them coordinated with each other, and their lethality was stronger. He ordered the horse under him to gallop and turned his body to avoid the sneak arrows. Looks like Shanyang District and Maolin District are safe. Jiang Nongqin responded with a hum and didn't say anything else. Li Yun didn't mind her coldness, and the battlefield wasn't suitable for frequent communication. At this moment, he was deeply moved by the capabilities of the few masters. They really never suffered losses no matter where they went. Maolin District almost turned out in full force. Even so, they didn't gain any advantage in Shanyang District. Instead, they were utterly defeated and chased by their lord's troops. Li Yun's face darkened. Not a trace of his usual adorable self could be seen. He held the silver spear in his hand steadily, killing people accurately and swiftly. There were hundreds of troops following behind him. Most of them were male, but there were also female troops. Although the overall quality of women couldn't be compared to that of men, every group had its advantages and disadvantages. The female troops that accompanied him were the cream of the crop. Their stamina and willpower were exceptionally strong. They didn't complain or show any signs of frailty as they hurried on their journey, causing people to involuntarily overlook their gender. Not to mention Li Yun, who was leading the troops, even the other male troops, and even the female troops themselves slowly overlooked this point. Kill. When a group of hungry wild wolves charged into a herd of panicking sheep, what would it look like? The Tsingy army saw that they had nowhere to run, so they could only brace themselves and face the enemy head-on. But how could they defeat the enemy who had an imposing aura? They were utterly defeated the moment they met face-to-face. Jiang Pengji shouted again, "Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who don't surrender will be killed without mercy." When she realized that Li Yun had led his troops over, Jiang Pengji knew that she had already occupied the entire Fengyi district. But apart from Shanyang district, the other three districts were almost completely devoured by the Tsingy army. The people had all left their homes. This meant that when Jiang Pengji rebuilt the three districts, she would have no one to use. Rather than killing the Tsingy army in front of her, she might as well keep them as laborers. Chapter 530. Subordinate Li Yun greets my lord. Subordinate Jiang Nongqin greets my lord. After clearing the battlefield and capturing the captives, Li Yun and Jiang Nongqin led their respective horses to Jiang Pengji and half-knelt to pay their respects. Jiang Pengji leaned against a withered tree on the open ground and held a weed in her mouth. She said, "Get up, sit down, and rest." Li Yun was startled. Jiang Nongqin sat beside Jiang Pengji with a cold face. "Nongqin is indeed cuter. Han Mei, you are so restrained. It doesn't feel like you are your usual self." She was a cute little angel on a daily basis, and a cold and aloof Prince Charming on the battlefield. That was the most attractive contrast. There was no need to be restrained. She did not care about that. Li Yun looked slightly embarrassed. He simply found a place to sit down and placed the silver spear in his hand beside him. He asked, "Why are you here, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said, "Naturally, I am here in the same way you are here. How can a place like Jiaoping District be difficult for me?" Li Yun scratched his head and said shyly, "My lord is dignified and wise. The Tsingyi army is naturally no match for you." Jiang Nongqin had a quiet personality. She usually listened quietly. Unless she really had an opinion, she would not speak up easily. Therefore, she did not join the conversation. Jiang Pengji turned her head and asked Jiang Nongqin, "How are the results of your attack on Malan District?" The latter was stunned for a moment. She reacted after a while and said, "The Tsingyi army has few guards in Malan District. Officer Meng is experienced in battles. Mr. Su is resourceful and resourceful. Therefore, it did not take long for us to take over Malan District. The generals and soldiers fought bravely. Other than 20 people who were lightly injured, 6 were seriously injured, and 8 were killed in battle. The rest of the soldiers were safe and sound. The 6 seriously injured soldiers were an accident. If they had not let their guard down, at most one would have been slightly injured. As for the 8 who died in battle, they were shot by the enemy's stray arrows at the beginning of the sneak attack on the city. They died of untreated wounds. It was already very proud to have such an outcome in a sneak attack on the city. Not to mention that there were many inexperienced new soldiers among them. There were also female soldiers who were purely holding them back in the eyes of others. Of course, only the soldiers participating in the battle could judge whether or not they were holding them back. Outsiders had no right or qualification to comment. Take care of the injured soldiers, and let the souls of the fallen warriors return to their homeland. Have their corpses been properly disposed of? Although the casualties were small, they were still there. The dead could not be resurrected, but she could make up for the families of the living and the dead. It was a form of comfort and compensation. Jiang Nongqin secretly glanced at Li Yun. His expression was natural, and he was not displeased by Jiang Pengji's cold treatment. She calmed down and continued, "Rest assured, my lord. The corpses of the soldiers have all been collected. Those that can be buried have already been buried." The audience in the streaming room were mostly fans of Li Yun's looks or true love. The little angel was treated coldly by the streamer and was inexplicably unhappy, kneeling begging for monthly tickets. "Hey, host, did you see our little angel Han Mei's longing eyes? Look at him. Otherwise will now. Poor little angel, don't panic. Come to my arms, I'll give you a loving hug." Is this the post-battle summary report? Our little angel Han Mei knows it too. The streamer can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Shenglai Mai, don't panic. Han Mei is not a narrow-minded person. Why would he feel wronged? Jiang Pengji unintentionally glanced at the bullet screen and was secretly amused. She continued to ask Nongqin about the arrangements in Malan District and sent a bullet screen to explain so that Han Mei's fan club would not continue to lash out at her and say that she bullied their husband. Host V. Han Mei is the deputy captain of the Vanguard Battalion. Nongqin is the captain of the female battalion. Naturally, I can't ask about the situation without Nongqin's permission. Jiang Pengji liked to do whatever she wanted, but it did not mean that she would let her guard down when it came to certain matters of principle. The military camp was a place with clear hierarchy and strict discipline. Her attitude would affect their status among the soldiers. If she treated Jiang Nongqin coldly, it would give the soldiers the misconception that she, the captain, was inferior to the deputy captain. Unintentionally, it would weaken Nongqin's prestige among the soldiers. Even if the weakening was very slight, Jiang Pengji did not want that to happen. All right, since the streamer had explained, the audience in the streaming room also expressed their understanding. They turned around and showered gifts. The accompanying comments were, "Touch my little angel. Little angel is not sad. Come over and let Annie rub you," making Jiang Pengji feel helpless. Jiang Pengji then asked about the general situation in Maolin district. After all, it had to be rebuilt after the war. How could a place that had been ravaged by locusts like the Tsing-Yi army be prosperous? Jiang Pengji still used Xiangyang district as her base camp, but her influence had already spread to the whole of Fengyi County. Jiang Nongqin was a careful person. She did not expect Jiang Pengji to ask her, but she had made all the necessary preparations. Since the Lord valued her, she would naturally tell her everything she knew. She did not hold back and did not leave anything out. Jiang Pengji's brows furrowed imperceptibly. If the financial situation of the three districts was ranked, Qingan district was the poorest, followed by Maolin district, and Jiaoping district was in the best condition. However, the situation of population loss in the three districts was similar. It was not to say that 9 out of 10 houses were empty, but it was sparsely populated. Forget it, rebuilding is not something that can be done in a day. Although there are fewer people, it is not a ghost town. The captives of the Tsing-Yi army can be used as laborers, which can relieve a lot of pressure. I'll ask Xiaoyu and the rest to put up notices to recruit laborers and slowly rebuild the three districts. There were benefits to having fewer people. Many houses and lands had become ownerless. She could use them to her heart's content to seek benefits. The larger Jiang Pengji's territory was, the stronger her military force was. In the eyes of outsiders, her place was a paradise in a chaotic world. When the time came, it was unknown how many people and wealthy merchants would be attracted to seek refuge. Well, think about the houses in Xiangyang district. The prices had gone from being worthless to increasing every day. Recently, wealthy merchants had sent their servants to inquire. The land and house deeds were all in Jiang Pengji's hands. She was still unwilling to let them go. It was too much of a loss to sell them now. When Fengyi County was completely stabilized, these houses could only be sold at the proper price. However, her military force was only about 10,000 people. If they were spread out and scattered across the 4 districts, it was really a stretch. It was imperative to recruit soldiers and expand the military force. During the early stages of rebuilding, it was probably the most dangerous time for Jiang Pengji's power. The territory was too big and the military force was too scattered. If they were caught by the enemy, they might be overturned. However, she believed that her strategists were smart people. Even if she did not send any instructions, they would know what to do during this period of time. Facts prove that whether it was Jiaoping District's Qiguanrang, Qingan District's Wei Ci, or Maolin District's Su Ku, they were all great teammates. Having just conquered the 3 districts, the 3 of them coincidentally recruited usable laborers. On the other hand, they had to think of a way to make the 1,000 or 2,000 troops look like 10,000 people. They had to strengthen the patrols and throw smoke bombs to confuse the possible enemies so that they would not dare to act rashly. Xiangyang District had 1-2 consecutive battles, which could more or less deter the enemies who coveted it. Chapter 531. The changes in power in Fengyi County did not attract much attention. Apart from the Tsing-Yi army that suffered heavy losses and the Red Lotus group that fought the Tsing-Yi army to death, the north was still quiet. On the contrary, the flames of war in the south had already ignited and caused a chain reaction. Prince Changshu had sent the corpse of Lu Shi's mistress, Lu Huan, to Chongzhou. His original intention was to use this to rope Lu Shi in and have him stand on the same side as himself. Who knew that Lu Shi was indifferent? After receiving the coffin of his mistress, he did not even make a sound. Lu Shi's heartless and indifferent reaction made Prince Changshu furious. Not only did the hatred in his heart deepen, but he also remembered Lu Shi. However, He could not do anything to Lu Shi for the time being. He could only wait for him to ascend the throne before settling the score. However, even though Prince Changsho schemed to drive a wedge between the emperor and Huang Song, making Huang Song withdraw from the front line and become the district magistrate of Diang District, he still could not successfully take over Qinzhou. He also could not pull his brother, the emperor, down from the throne. Why did this happen? It was because his chief strategist had jumped ship. Speaking of this, one had to mention that Prince Changsho became increasingly arrogant and exposed his true nature. Since the last time Lu Shi secretly sent someone to send a letter to Prince Changsho, letting him know that Lu Huan, Lu Shi's daughter, was Prince Changsho's biological daughter, he lost his composure and embarrassed his chief strategist. After that, when the war came to a stalemate, Prince Changsho thought that the strategist was incompetent and repeatedly embarrassed him. Not only that, when the military generals questioned the correctness of the strategist's strategy, Prince Changsho also added insult to injury. Thus, Prince Changsho completely offended the capable strategist in his camp. It was all right to offend an ordinary person. Anyway, ordinary people were not capable, so Prince Changsho was not afraid. However, he offended a petty and vengeful strategist. The key was that the strategist really had a brain, so it was awkward. Before the strategist jumped ship, he even schemed against Prince Changsho, causing him to make a major mistake in the battle to attack Qinzhou. His troops were severely depleted, and his vitality was severely damaged. It was precisely because of this that the forces in Qinzhou who were in imminent danger were saved, allowing them to take a breather and counterattack. However, the strategist was smart. He did not expose himself before he did something bad and pushed the blame to others. Successfully shifting the blame to Prince Changsho, the strategist jumped ship and left. Prince Changsho was too ashamed to vent his anger on him. The facts proved that the strategist's approach was correct. Prince Changsho's front line failed. He was about to break through Qinzhou's defense line and deploy his troops to the new capital, but he made a huge mistake, causing half of his elite troops to be devoured by Qinzhou, causing him to suffer a great loss. In this short period of time, he could only look at Qinzhou helplessly, unable to deal a devastating blow to Qinzhou. After losing the battle, Prince Changsho thought of this adorable strategist and randomly sent a small soldier to call him over. The tent was empty. The strategist had already packed his bags and left. Before he left, he even left a letter. The content of the letter was naturally not something like, "I'm leaving, you heartless man. You betrayed my trust. I don't want to be with you anymore," or something like that. Instead, it was a tearful complaint about his sick mother at home and that she would die soon. As a filial son, he wanted to go home to serve his mother and send her off. Reading this letter that was filled with sorrow and filial piety, Prince Changsho could not vent his anger no matter how angry he was, not to mention that he was the one in the wrong. He treated the strategist coldly and did not even know that the strategist's mother was seriously ill. Now that the strategist had left to be filial to his mother, Prince Changsho felt that he should send him some generous gifts to express his sincerity. At this moment, Prince Changsho still did not know that his strategist had not left temporarily. He had gone far away. Even his defeat at the front line was caused by the strategist. It was fine if he did not know the truth, but when he knew, he would probably have the urge to eat him alive. Prince Changsho did not think of chasing him back. Firstly, he would lose face. After losing the battle, he hurriedly went to find the strategist he had been cold to for a long time, as if he could not leave him. How could he put his face? Secondly, he had a lot of talents under him. Did he lack this one? Naturally, he did not lack one. Therefore, it was fine for him to be filial to his mother. When he returned after the filial piety, his status would be even lower. Prince Changsho casually threw the bamboo slip letter aside, then ordered his men to summon the other strategist to prepare to discuss the follow-up matters. What about the strategist who had quietly left for 3 days? He had already left with his page boy and half a carriage of books. These books were all copied by him using the bamboo paper provided by Prince Changsho. Although it was only half a carriage and could only hold 1 or 2 boxes, if it was made into bamboo slips, it would probably not even be enough to fill 20 carriages. Although Prince Changsho was not a good person, when he was good to people, he was really good. Knowing that this chief strategist liked to read, he tried his best to cater to his interests and gave him all kinds of precious books. This strategist also saw through Prince Changsho's nature. He knew that he would not be under Prince Changsho for long, so wouldn't he copy as much as he could? The page boy who was driving the carriage asked, "Sir, where are we going now?" The strategist studied in the carriage and said casually, "Anywhere is fine, but not in the south." The south was the battlefield between Prince Changsho and the Dongxing royal family. Now that Prince Changsho's vitality was greatly damaged, his original advantage was reduced to dust, causing the two forces to return to the starting line. They still had a lot to grind. If he continued to stay in the south, what if he accidentally encountered Prince Changsho's forces? Yes, the strategist's so-called old mother is seriously ill was just an excuse. In fact, he did not even know who his biological mother was. He grew up with the help of his teachers. According to his teachers, his biological mother might be a prostitute because he was found in that place. The swaddling clothes he was wrapped in were considered rich, unlike a child from a poor family. However, this was old history that did not need to be investigated. The strategist did not care at all. The page boy had a bitter face. He said while driving the carriage, "There has to be a place. We can't just run away in fear, can we? The world is so chaotic now. I heard that after Nansheng was destroyed, it was a mess. The feudal lords rose, and Dongxing was also in chaos. It's easy to get into trouble if you run around blindly." The strategist lifted the curtain impatiently and said with a frown, "In the past, I've always said that I'm long-winded and meddlesome. Now that it's your turn to be in charge, why are you blaming me? I'll let you make the decision. You can run wherever you want to run." The page boy's face grew bitter. How could there be such a stubborn and difficult teacher? After thinking for a while, he said, "Sir, didn't you admire that person called Huang? I heard that he was demoted to Diong District. I remember that Diong District is in Mauda County of Haozhou. It's close to the north, far away from the center of the war in the south, and out of reach of the war in the north. Let's go there." The strategist rolled the book in his hand and gently knocked the back of the page boy's head. Chapter 532. This little boy's servant of his was really petty. When the strategist was working for Prince Changsho's camp, he came up with a plan to trick Huang Song. Huang Song was probably extremely resentful towards this black pot that fell from the sky. If Huang Song knew that it was his idea and that he was the one who instigated Prince Changsho, how could he not bear a grudge? How was this going to seek refuge? It was clearly courting death. Although it was a critical remark, there was a hint of joy and amusement in his tone. One could tell that he was not angry at the boy servant's pettiness. The boy servant naturally understood his master's temper. He was even more certain that the other party would not be angry because of this and would even be eager to try. He said, "Sir, your strategy is unparalleled. If that Huang something is really as good as you say, he won't blame you." The strategist clicked his tongue and immediately entered the carriage. He leaned against the table and spoke lazily. "Up to you." The boy's servant smiled and said, "All right, let's go to Yang District now." Daily pitting master and servant against each other, January 1st, completed. Nowadays, the world was unstable and the people's hearts were in chaos. The knowledgeable people in the world were not optimistic about the Dongxing royal family or Prince Changsho. No matter who won, they would not be able to restore light to this chaotic world. They also did not have the ability or magnanimity to set things right. Since the fall of the Great Xia dynasty, the world was divided into 5 countries. The 5 countries had been established for a short period of time. Those celebrities could not be said to be patriotic at all. Since the world was muddy and unclear, a new world would be created and light would be restored. In this world, there were countless people who chased after fame and profit. As long as there was profit to be made, there would naturally be no shortage of people who chased after it. Some people wanted to support a wise ruler and leave his name in the annals of history, a good name that would last for 10,000 years. This strategist was no exception. Before Prince Changsho revealed his true nature, he indeed had the appearance of a wise ruler. To put it bluntly, he was good at acting. In addition, he was Prince Changsho of the Dongqing royal family. He had a fertile and vast fief and a strong army. He had a very strong capital to fight for the world. However, he was not a patient person and his acting skills were not refined to perfection. It did not take long before he revealed all his flaws. After seeing this person's true colors, the strategist did not want to assist such a terrible person. A good bird chose a tree to rest in, and a virtuous minister chose a master to serve. If he could meet a suitable master, he would naturally do his best. If he met an unsuitable one, he would jump ship as soon as possible and find a suitable one. However, since they had worked together for a while, the strategist did not want to go against his old master for the time being. Under the setting sun, the carriage slowly drove toward Diong district. He wanted to see if this capable Huangsong was really capable and how broad-minded he was. He cherished his life, but liked to play with it. The boy servant knew his temperament very well. Otherwise, he would not have suggested that the two of them go to Diong district. The further north they went, the more refugees there were. Barren fields, starving people, dilapidated ruins. Everything impacted the duo's eyes. However, the strategist had seen many things, and he had a cold personality, so he did not reveal any complicated expressions. On the other hand, the errand boy was still somewhat innocent and kind. When he saw the numb refugees or the crying children, he sighed with emotion. However, he remembered his identity and did not give them any food or money. In fact, he did not even stay for long. When one was outside and the world was so chaotic, kindness sometimes could not be exchanged for gratitude. It might even lead to killing intent. For safety's sake, the errand boy used a skinny old horse to drive the carriage. He changed his clothes into old clothes with many patches, and the carriage that the strategist sat in was also changed into a dusty old carriage. However, the interior of the carriage was more comfortable and clean. With such a combination, as long as they did not encounter refugees who were driven to a dead end, they would generally be fine. The strategist merely raised his eyebrows at this arrangement and did not comment on it. The errand boy took care of his daily life and had always been reliable and considerate. He washed, cooked, sewed, drove, repaired, and survived in the wild. As long as he had this little errand boy with him, he did not have to worry about his life being uncomfortable. Even if he was thrown on an uninhabited, deserted island, he would still be able to live comfortably. Sir, in this current world, when do you think it will be peaceful? The errand boy was still in his 20s. His hair was tied up in a small bun. Coupled with his chubby little face, he looked even younger. The strategist answered without raising his head, "I'm not a god. How would I know these things?" The errand boy said, "But aren't you determined to assist a wise ruler to help the common people in the world? The person you chose should be able to do this." The strategist bought this errand boy from a starving refugee for only a dozen copper coins. It was originally just a moment of kindness, but he did not expect the errand boy to have a pure heart and was very grateful to others. The strategist simply raised him as a younger brother. However, it seemed that he had raised him too much, causing the errand boy to have extra confidence and admiration for him. Who knows? Maybe a few years, maybe a few decades. Maybe when I'm in the coffin, the world will still be chaotic. The carriage was pulled by an old horse, so it naturally could not be fast. They could only travel slowly. After traveling for a few days, the master and servant ordered a big bowl of tea in a shabby tea house. Some tea leaves floated on the muddy water, and the taste of the tea was quite touching. However, the strategist drank it without a frown. Instead, the errand boy complained that he had been wronged. The master and servant dressed low-key, looking like a poor family. While they were drinking tea, they heard someone talking about Fengyi County. "Have you heard that the damned Sing bastards in Fengyi County have been chased out? Who is so powerful? I heard that even the county chief of Fengyi County wagged his tail at the Sing army. Someone actually chased them out. I heard that it's the district magistrate of Xianyang County, called Lu Shi. I heard that Xiangyang County was once the territory of the Tsing Yi army, but didn't the government make Lu Shi a district magistrate? Last year, he directly led his men to beat up the bastards in Xiangyang County and even incorporated them into his army. The North suffered from the torment of the Tsing Yi army and the Red Lotus group. Many people left their homes and fled to the south. Although there was also a war in the south, they still cared about their reputation and would not be as reckless and violent as the two bandits. Coincidentally, there were also refugees who escaped from Fengyi County in the tea house. When they heard the news about their hometown, they could not help but ask, "Then, what about Chang'an District?" "I escaped from Chang'an District. With the Tsing Yi bastards, they're also beaten up?" The person who told the news said, "They have already been beaten up. Chang'an District has now been taken back by the district magistrate, Lu Shi." The commoner was overjoyed when he heard that, but he immediately hesitated. It was not easy for him to escape from Chang'an District. Who knew what would happen in the future? If he went back rashly, he might even lose his life. Someone saw through his thoughts and said, "Tisk, you're hesitating. I want to go there and find a job. Unfortunately, my wife and I don't allow it. They say it's a long journey, and it would be bad if something happens to me on the way. They insist on stopping me from going." Why? It's good to stay here. Although this place was poor, at least there was no war. At most, the place was a little remote and life was a little tough. The person looked around and asked the people who heard the news, "Do you know what kind of place Xiangyang County is?" Chapter 533. Your information is really bad. Xiangyang District is a paradise. I heard that the merchants who went there to do business have returned. Many people want to move their families there. I heard that the land there is neat and tidy. It's clean even on rainy days. The houses are like heavenly palaces. The man described it in poor language, and what he said was what he had heard from the merchants. When Fengyi County was still in the hands of the Tsing Yi army, the merchants still dared to do business in Xiangyang District. This in itself explained a lot of problems. What do you think Xiangyang District used to look like? It wasn't much better than here. In the hands of District Magistrate Lu Shi, it changed in half a year. Now that Chang'an District, Maolin District, and Jiaoping District have all been conquered by him, these three poor places might become as good as Xiangyang District. What do you think? If I go for such a good opportunity, I might become rich. The person danced with joy as he spoke. In the end, he sighed. Unfortunately, my wife and I won't allow it. Otherwise, they'll fight with me. Everyone was discussing it. They were very curious about the Xiangyang District that the person mentioned. Most of them did not believe it. Upon hearing that, the boy's servant asked the strategist in a low voice in surprise, "This Lu Shi, isn't he just a district magistrate?" A district magistrate mobilized troops to attack the three nearby districts? Who would believe such nonsense, let alone to recover the lost land in Dongqing and save the people from suffering? A mere district magistrate actually had the ability and military strength to recover the three districts. From what he said, he even had the three districts in his pocket. He's ambitious and bold. The strategist took a sip of tea. He's an interesting person. The teacher had heard of Lu Shi, but Lu Shi, he had never heard of him. "Would you like to take a look, sir?" the boy's servant asked. The teacher glanced at the boy's servant amusedly and said, "Didn't you say that you wanted to go to Diong District?" As the master and servant were talking, they heard the person say in exasperation, "What I said is true. Those were spread by merchants when they were doing business. Who dared to go to Chang'an District to do business in the past? Now, they've all gone there, and each of them has made a lot of money. The person in charge is said to be Wei Ci or something. He's a great beauty and does business logically." The attendant widened his eyes in astonishment. "Mr. Zixiao? I don't think so. Maybe he has the same name, or maybe he got the wrong person. With Zixiao's personality, he doesn't seem to be the type to fall into a trap so quickly." The current situation in the world was still chaotic. With Wei Ci's complicated thoughts, he would most likely choose to observe for a while and wait for the true dragon. The page boy pouted and said, "Didn't that person say she was a great beauty?" The strategist couldn't help but laugh. I've taught you several times, but you didn't listen. Zixiao hates it when people talk about his appearance. The errand boy raised his hand and rubbed his chubby face. His appearance was mediocre. He really did not understand the mentality of those who wish to be ugly. I'm not allowed to say that she's beautiful. Then I won't say it in the future. The boy grinned. After a while, they listened carefully to that person's narration. The more they listened, the more they felt that the mayor of Chang'an District was Wei Ci. The attendant said in a daze, "Maybe it's really Mr. Zixiao?" The strategist said uncertainly, "Perhaps." The servant asked, "Sir, why don't we go to Chang'an District to look for Mr. Zixiao?" The strategist was rather helpless. "You're a man of your word. Since we're already at the border of Diang District, it's only a day's time. It's not a wasted trip to see Huang Song first. If you're not satisfied, we'll go to Chang'an District to look for Zixiao." The master and servant drank their tea and returned to the carriage. The weather was still cold, and the people were still wearing heavy clothes. After the end of the spring plowing, there was a period of slack. There were not many people on both sides of the street. However, the closer they got to Diang District, the more lively it was. It looked a little like the leisure life of a farmer. This Diang District is peaceful. It seems that Huang something is quite capable. The servant drove the carriage, and the wheels of the carriage rolled slowly. The strategist clicked his tongue and did not make any comments. The master and servant found a quiet place and found that there were open tea houses and eateries on both sides of the street. The people who came and went had a slight blush on their faces. It was obvious that they were living a good life. The servant's impression of Huang Song increased gradually. The strategist's ears were filled with his servant's nagging, saying that everything was good, and that Huang Song seemed to be a good person. "You're very noisy," he said calmly. The servant retorted, "If I don't speak, you'll definitely say that the surroundings are too quiet again." Daily pitting master and servant against each other, January 1st, completed. He was mentally exhausted. Where had the reserved and obedient servant gone? The strategist found a seat in the tea house and asked the waiter some questions. Then, he ordered a pot of ordinary tea. "Don't you think Diang District is good, sir?" The servant stretched his neck and looked out of the window. Ever since they entered the city, the scenery they saw was quite good. There were even children playing on the streets. "It's quite good. However, it was not good enough. Are you going to stay here, sir? Let's meet Huang Song first before making a decision." The strategist frowned, and information about Huang Song flashed across his mind. Since Huang Song and Feng Ju had caused a lot of trouble for Prince Changsho had investigated the identity and background of these two people. Huang Song was the godson of Huang Tan, who was a eunuch's descendant. His family background was a problem. However, he was not much better. Naturally, he would not be picky about his family background. As for his ability, the Diang District in front of him was the best evidence. However, he had to focus on this person's breadth of mind and bearing. After all, he was the one who had schemed to get Prince Changsho to frame Huang Song. How could Huang Song not bear a grudge and be disgusted? He did not want to be put in a difficult position. "How do we meet him?" The servant asked. "Hand over a visitation card and say that Yang Si from Ding County at the border of Chenzhou wishes to meet him." The servant exclaimed and said, "Sir, if we directly send a visitation card, he might not be willing to meet us." Yang Si said with a smile, "If Huang Song doesn't even know who plotted against him, there's no need to meet him. If Huang Song investigated him, he would naturally know who Yang Si was. Regardless of whether he flew into a rage or something else, he should at least meet him." The servant nodded in agreement and wrote a visitation card neatly. When the gatekeeper saw that the servant was dressed in rags and had countless patches on his clothes, he felt disdain in his heart. He took the visitation card unhappily. Without looking at the contents, the gatekeeper took it directly into the mansion. He did not put the card at the top. Instead, he squeezed it to the bottom. The visitation cards placed at the top were all from important people. After waiting for 3 days, there was still no news. Yang Si asked the servant to describe the situation that day in detail, and the servant said it aggrievedly. "How would he pay attention to you when you were wearing a set of patched clothes? I'm afraid this card won't even reach that person's table. Forget it, forget it. If we can't meet, then we can't meet. Pack up, let's set off to find Zixiao. That person still owes your master a few strings of money. He hasn't paid for a few years. This time we must get it back. Yang Si did not have any reluctance to leave, so he asked the servant to pack up and leave. The servant pulled the rug from under his feet. It's not that Mr. Zixiao owes you. It's clearly that you compounded the interest from a penny of buns to a few strings of money. Yang Si turned his head and scolded him softly. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. After the master and servant had been on the road for half a day, Feng Zhu, who was already crazy busy, inadvertently flipped through the pile of visitation cards on Huang Song's table. Chapter 534. Seeing this visitation card, Feng Zhu's heart surged with ecstasy. Ever since he suffered a loss at the hands of Prince Changsho, both he and Huang Song had noticed Prince Changsho's chief strategist, Yang Si. Yang Si was not well known. After all, to become an official or a scholar in Dongqing, there was a requirement for one's family background. People like Yang Si naturally belonged to the lower class. Therefore, Prince Changsho recruited him, which was why Yang Si went to him and was put in an important position. Unfortunately, Prince Changsho was not a wise ruler after all. Yang Si was soon given the cold shoulder. Feng Zhu did not expect Yang Si's visitation card to appear on Huang Song's table. This meant that Yang Si had already left Prince Changsho and was currently without a master. If his lord, Huang Song, could recruit this person, it would be like adding wings to a tiger, and his foundation would be stronger. Although Diang district had not experienced war, this small county also had its own ecological circle. The forces between them were complicated. Huang Song had indeed put in a lot of effort to completely control these and become the veritable magistrate of Diang district. As soon as the situation stabilized, Feng Zhu sent letters to his former classmates and friends. Now, there were already many replies with good news. Unfortunately, they had not come over yet. There were too few people who could be used in Diang district. Now that Yang Si had come, and he was a genuine talent, how could Feng Zhu not be happy? No one would complain about having too many talents, let alone Yang Si, who was a top-notch talent in a certain field. Feng Zhu calmed himself down and quickly sent someone to invite Huang Song over. On the other hand, he carefully asked the concierge, "Do you know where the person who sent this visitation card lives?" Feng Zhu glanced at the handwriting on the visitation card. It was well written and did not seem to have been written by a treacherous person like Yang Si. He thought about it and reckoned that this visitation card should have been written by Yang Si's boy servant on his behalf. The concierge glanced at the visitation card and was startled. He looked a little embarrassed and kept dodging Feng Zhu's gaze. Feng Zhu frowned and realized that there might be a twist in this. His heart skipped a beat, and he had an ominous premonition. He quickly asked, "Wait, how many days ago was this visitation card sent? Or did you do something disrespectful to him?" How could the gatekeeper endure Feng Zhu's increasingly imposing manner? He was so scared that he quickly waved his hands, but he couldn't say anything useful. The more Feng Zhu looked, the more he felt that things were getting worse. He slammed his palm on the table, making a thunderous sound that made the gatekeeper's heart tremble. He said, "Tell me the truth, don't hide anything." The gatekeeper was so scared that he was trembling all over. Cold sweat flowed down his back in no time, drenching his clothes. He closed his eyes and accepted his fate. This card was sent here 3 days ago. I didn't disrespect that person 3 days ago. Feng Zhu widened his eyes and stared at the gatekeeper. His heart was burning with anger, and his right hand was clenched into a fist to prevent himself from losing his composure. "Tell me everything that happened that day in detail, word for word. Otherwise, you know the consequences." Feng Zhu suppressed the raging anger in his heart and said to the gatekeeper, "Do you know what a big mistake you've made? I hope I can make up for my mistakes. Otherwise," in fact, even if the gatekeeper didn't say it in detail, Feng Zhu could guess some of it. He was just flipping through the visitation card out of boredom. This card was placed at the bottom, but according to Huang Song's serious attitude in dealing with official affairs, it was impossible for him to pile up official duties. The only possibility was that the gatekeeper had made the decision to place this visitation card at the bottom. The gatekeeper knelt on the ground. When had he ever seen Feng Zhu speak so harshly? In the past, this noble young master had always been gentle and dignified, with a lazy smile on his face. He treated people very well and didn't put on airs. Now, he suddenly showed his imposing manner as a son of an aristocratic family. The gatekeeper was so frightened that he naturally said whatever he wanted to say. As soon as he finished speaking, Huang Song came in from the outside sleepily. Seeing the gatekeeper kneeling on the ground and trembling like a sieve, Feng Zhu was still angry. He said, "Brother Zhu, what big mistake did this little gatekeeper make to make you so angry? Don't be angry, I'll settle the score for you." Even though Feng Zhu was full of anger, in the face of Huang Song's mischievous attitude, he suddenly couldn't get angry. He threw the visitation card in his hand into Huang Song's arms, pointed to the gatekeeper, and said, "Take a look yourself. This wicked servant has ruined a lot of things." Huang Song was surprised. He had known Feng Zhu for so long, and this person had rarely been angry. Once he was really angry, it was definitely not a small matter. Thinking of this, Huang Song quickly opened the visitation card. When he saw the name inscribed, his whole face twitched. The culprit who had once pulled him down from the position of colonel had actually come to send a visitation card. This feeling was really dreamy. However, Huang Song immediately realized that this was a good opportunity to recruit talents. Although he had many useful people under him, most of them were relatively mediocre, and top-notch talents were still scarce. Feng Zhu had already written to his classmates and friends, but only a few of them replied affirmatively. Most of the others were taking a wait-and-see attitude. Of those who were willing to come, which one of them didn't come because of Feng Zhu, Huang Song's favor of saving people during the earthquake in Dongqing, and the good reputation he had accumulated during the battle in Qinzhou? Otherwise, based on Huang Song's background alone, why would those nobles pay any attention to him? It wasn't that they looked down on Huang Song because of his background, it was just that Huang Song wasn't strong enough for people to ignore his background. Feng Zhu's social skills were very strong. He had made a lot of friends when he was studying in the academy, and they maintained correspondence all year round. Therefore, Feng Zhu could bring a group of capable talents to Huang Song. However, the current Huang Song was still too weak. If he was a little stronger, the number of people he could persuade would at least double. This Yangtze was the first talent who took the initiative to come to him. It was of great significance. Huang Song quickly asked the gatekeeper, "Where's the person who sent the visitation card?" The gatekeeper said with a bitter face, "I only know that they're staying at a guest house in the city, but it's been 3 days. I don't know if they're still there." 3 days had passed. Huang Song looked at the visitation card in surprise, then looked at the gatekeeper, and then looked at Feng Zhu, who was still angry. Well, he could understand why Feng Zhu was so angry. Feng Zhu's temper was still good, and he always maintained the reserved demeanor of a son of an aristocratic family. If it were Huang Song, he would have kicked the gatekeeper to vent his anger. In fact, he did do that, but he controlled the strength of his kick and did not kick the gatekeeper too hard. Lead the way. Although 3 days had passed, if they were lucky, the person hadn't left angrily yet. However, when they rushed to the guest house, the news they received was that the person had left the city at daybreak. "It's only been half a day. We can still catch up." Feng Zhu resisted the urge to vomit blood. This gatekeeper was really tireless. Huang Song was also impatient. He took the reins handed to him by a servant, turned around, and got on the horse, ready to give chase. Feng Zhu looked at the back of Huang Song's horse, and he felt like he was about to collapse. The talent who came to him was actually pushed away just like that. Chapter 535. The old horse pulled the carriage and walked leisurely. 1 step, 2 steps, 1 step, 2 steps. The pace was so slow that it made one sleepy. Although they had been walking for half a day, they were not too far away from Diong District. The boy servant sat outside the carriage and muttered, "Sir, what if the person in charge of Chang'an District isn't Mr. Zixiao? the boy's servant asked worriedly. Yang Si lifted the curtains on both sides and rolled up a book in his hands. The handwriting on it was delicate and powerful. Although it was not the work of a master, one could see the foundation of the handwriting. It had its own style, which was completely different from the boy servant's regular handwriting style. After listening to the boy servant's complaints, he said, "You're so unpredictable. If it weren't for my good temper, I don't know how much you'd suffer. You were the one who said you wanted to come to Diong District and Chang'an District. Now, you're the one who doesn't want to go." The boy's servant muttered, "I'm just worried. I ran into a wall in Diong District this time. What if I run into a wall in Chang'an District too?" It was very dangerous to go out, especially when the situation in the north was unstable. There were conflicts between the Tsing-E army and the Red Lotus group everywhere. There were countless mobs who became bandits. The master and servant could arrive in Diong District safely, but it did not mean that they could arrive in Chang'an District safely. Yang Si said, "You're worrying too much. Instead of worrying unnecessarily here, why don't you think about what to eat for lunch today? I refuse to eat dry food." The boy's servant said with a bitter face, "You're still picky at this time. It's hard to serve you." The master and servant chatted again. After about an hour, the sound of hooves could be heard behind them. Yang Si frowned and leaned a little closer to the window to take a look. He saw a young man in clean clothes galloping on a horse. From his appearance, he should be the son of a wealthy family. But at this moment, it was as if his buttocks were on fire, and he had an anxious expression on his face. Huang Song saw the carriage in front of him moving slowly. He suddenly pulled the reins and saw a thin man sitting inside through the window. His cheeks were a little plump, and his eyes were gentle. His eyes were like dark, deep pools, and his lips were naturally upturned. No matter from which angle one looked at him, he was an amiable man. He was far too different from the Yang Si in Huang Song's imagination. When he saw the young attendant sitting outside the carriage, dressed in old clothes full of colorful patches, he stared at him with wide eyes. "Hero, what do you want to do?" The servant looked at the other party in panic and tightened his grip on the horsewhip in his hand. When Huang Song saw the page boy, he couldn't help but think of what the gatekeeper had said. His eyes lit up as he looked at Yang Si in the carriage. He cupped his fists, composed himself, and asked, "Sir, are you Yang Si, Mr. Yang of Jiangding County?" The attendant looked a little surprised. Unfortunately, Huang Song's attention was on Yang Si, and he did not notice this detail. Yang Si put down the book in his hand, lowered his eyelids, and said with a natural expression, "My surname is Zhao. You've got the wrong person." Huang Song was disappointed. Then he apologized to Yang Si, waved his whip, and continued on his way. When he was out of sight, the page boy asked in a low voice, "Sir, that was..." Yang Si said with certainty, "Huang Song." The page boy was delighted, but he immediately withered. "Sir, why did you say that you're not him?" Yang Si said, "I'm not satisfied. This person is still too young and impulsive. I'm an old man who can't stand being tossed around." The page boy did not ask any more questions. If his master was not satisfied, then it was definitely not good. In fact, Yang Si was very satisfied with Huang Song's behavior of chasing after him. If Huang Song became more stable and mature in a few years, Yang Si felt that this person was indeed worth a try. He was able to disregard the past grudges and chase after him all the way. Just this action alone was more than 10 times better than Prince Changsho. Yang Si said, "Wait a few more years. This person might be a hidden dragon. Now, let's go to Chang'an District to find Zixiao to collect our debt and freeload for a few years. If Huang Song doesn't become crooked, we'll make another trip to Diong District." Even if he left the mountain to look for a wise master, this was also about timing. He was indeed very satisfied with Huang Song. However, the timing was not right now. Naturally, Yang Si would not go back to him. The page boy was almost confused by his master, but he only needed to follow orders. Huang Song rode the horse and searched for an entire afternoon. There was no one who matched Yang Si and his servant on the road. When he thought about it again, he was immediately annoyed. That pair of master and servant was definitely Yang Si and his servant. When Feng Ju saw Huang Song return with a disappointed face He asked about the situation and knew why Huang Song did not stop them. He sighed and said, "I'm afraid that Yang Si is angry." Huang Song felt uncomfortable and was quite critical of Yang Si's actions of playing tricks on people. He said, "Their carriage can't drive fast. If we send troops and horses, we can intercept them." Feng Ju frowned and said tiredly, "Forget it. The people's hearts are not here. What's the use of stopping them?" If the concierge had not caused trouble, Yang Si would have been taken in. Unfortunately, such a big problem had arisen. Among the truly talented people, which one of them wasn't arrogant and prideful? After being treated coldly for 3 days, Feng Ju would feel angry even if he were in Huang Song's shoes, let alone Yang Si, who had some grudges with Huang Song. Since Feng Ju had said so, Huang Song could only give up dejectedly. On the way north, the number of refugees they saw increased several times, but there was no despair or numbness on their faces. This surprised the page boy and Yang Si. After asking carefully, they found out that these refugees were rushing to Chang'an District, Maolin District, and Jiaoping District. They're recruiting people there now. 3 meals a day will be provided. At least they won't starve there. I heard that if they do well, they can even be promoted and rewarded. In the future, if they settle down in the county town, they can even get their own land and rent a house in the county town. Many refugees talked about this. In addition to some doubts, they were more hopeful about their future lives. Yang Si and his servants slowly rushed to Chang'an District. From afar, they could see people working on the city wall. Even though it had been more than a month, they could still tell from the traces on the city wall that the tragedy of the siege had been. The page boy could not understand, but Yang Si found a way. There were many refugees waiting outside the city. There were 2 roads to enter the city. One was for the people in the city to enter and exit, and the other was for the refugees. The current Chang'an district was like a dance on the tip of a knife. Every step was extremely dangerous. The guards in the city were not as strong as what outsiders saw. If there were people with bad intentions among the refugees, they might cause trouble. Therefore, the screening of refugees entering the city was extremely strict. Even if they were refugees, the people in charge of the inspection were divided into 2 groups. One group was men, and the other group was women. The refugees had to queue up and be divided into 2 groups according to their gender for inspection, registration, and review. The page boy did not go to the group of refugees. Instead, he went to the tall city gate that was wide open. As expected, they were stopped. The page boy said, "My teacher and I are not refugees. We're here to look for someone." The guards at the city gate asked, "Looking for someone?" The page boy said politely, "The manager of Chang'an District, Wei Si, Mr. Wei Zixiao." Chapter 536. Chang'an District was severely short of manpower. The guards at the city gates were all rotated between the male and female battalions. The guard who came forward to inquire was a female soldier. The attendant was a little slow to realize the gender of the guard, and he looked a little helpless. There was something wrong with Chang'an District. Why would they let a woman guard the city gate and let her be exposed to the elements? The female soldier did not know what the other party was thinking. She saw that the page boy was wearing old clothes that were full of patches. The horse that was pulling the carriage was an old horse that looked like it was about to die. The horse walked slowly, and the carriage was shabby and simple. They must have suffered a lot in Chang'an District. The female soldier felt a bit of pity and asked with a gentler voice, "Are you here to find Mr. Wei?" Seeing that the female soldier had a good attitude, the servant felt relieved. It was good that he could communicate. He was afraid that he would meet someone who looked down on him. "My master's surname is Yang, and his name is Si. He is a good friend of Mr. Wei. I wonder if this, young lady, could you help me pass a message?" When the female soldier heard that Yang Si was Wei Si's friend, she did not dare to slight him. She ordered the messenger to pass on the message, and then respectfully asked the page boy to drive the carriage to the side so as not to block the people behind from entering the city. The servant was astonished to see the orderly scene at the city gate. "Sir, this place is interesting." It was the first time in his life that he had seen a female guard the city gate. Yang Si said, "It's indeed quite interesting, but it doesn't seem like Zixiao's style." He hit the nail on the head. This was indeed not Wei Si's doing. Wei Si's body was delicate and weak. Now that the seasons had changed, it was the season where it was easy to fall sick. He labored for a while before falling sick gloriously. In order not to be criticized by the audience in the streaming room, Jiang Pengji took the initiative to take over the miscellaneous items in Shangan District. Wei Si took care of things from the side. She reminded Wei Si, "I say, with your body, you really need to take good care of it." Weak and sickly, he felt like a porcelain doll. Jiang Pengji had never been soft-hearted when she pressured her subordinates, but she could not bring herself to do anything to this sickly man. Fortunately, Wei Si only had a low fever. After recuperating for a few days, his condition was almost healed. For the past 2 days, he had been able to help with official business. However, his lips were still a little pale. Coupled with his face, he was simply the standard of a sickly beauty. "Thank you for your concern, my lord. I will definitely take good care of myself in the future." Wei Si agreed gently, as if he was to blame for falling ill and delaying his work. She was so considerate that the audience in the streaming room couldn't help it. They felt deeply that Jiang Pengji was shameless. It wasn't that Beauty Si didn't recuperate. It was clearly that Chun Ku's work didn't give her time to recuperate. "You Tong, trash streamer, you bully my husband every day. My heart aches when I see you." Salted Egg Superman. Beauty Si still values her health. She's very cooperative when taking medicine when she's sick. I felt bitter when I looked at the screen before. Who asked the host to not have a firm foothold? Even if he wanted to recuperate, he wouldn't be able to recuperate in peace, right? Yan Rian, I think you guys should stop scolding the streamer. Let's just pick up our weapons and hit her. Shinja, you all feel sorry for Beauty Si, but I feel sorry for the streamer. She was a typical person who was tough on the outside, but soft-hearted on the inside. When Beauty Si was sick, she obediently took over the work. In the end, Beauty Si did not continue to be tired. Think back to the content of the live broadcast these days. It's all about the host handling documents in the government office. Looking at those flamboyant things, I always feel like I went to a fake school. According to Jiang Pengji's temperament, if she did not really sympathize with her subordinates, how could she stay in one place for a long time? She would have been so unrestrained that she could not be seen all day long. Okay? Speaking of which, the streamer is very good to Beauty Si. Look at Feng Jin, Su Ku, Qiguan Rang, Meng Hun, Lui Wei, and the others. They're all so busy. Have they ever seen the streamer being soft-hearted? It was not appropriate for Wei Si to waste his energy now, but he would carefully organize the bamboo slips according to the order of importance. The most important bamboo slips that needed to be dealt with the most were placed in a position that was convenient for her to reach. The slightly less important ones were placed in the first category. His expression was serious, and he was very meticulous in his work. Jiang Pengji picked up her pen to deal with the documents, annotated, or gave instructions. Occasionally, she looked up at Wei Si. Wei Si noticed her gaze and asked in amusement, "Why are you looking at me like that, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said very honestly, "You're gentle and virtuous. If we were husband and wife in our previous lives, you would definitely be a good wife." Wei Si's hand trembled and the bamboo slips fell to the ground with a thud. He raised his hand to pick them up, but he accidentally touched the table. The bamboo slips that had been piled high fell into a pile. His face was pale, and he lowered his head. He quickly picked up the bamboo slips and put them back in their original places. After a while, he pretended to be calm and asked with a pale face, "Why did you have such an absurd idea, my lord?" Jiang Pengji said, "I have some small habits when dealing with official affairs. I won't let people know unless they are extremely trustworthy." She had naturally experienced a lot of competition and tests to be able to climb to the pinnacle of power in the federal military from an ordinary genetic warrior. Not only did she have to guard against external enemies, but she also had to pay attention to internal abnormalities. Under such circumstances, how could her vigilance be weak? Wei Si was quite familiar with Jiang Pengji's habits. If he had not spent a long time with her, it would have been impossible for him to know that. She had tested him a few times in the past. Now, she was just more certain of the guess in her heart. Wei Si's lips moved. Jiang Pengji suddenly said, "It's just a joke. Zixiao, don't take it seriously." He only felt that his palms were soaked with cold sweat. The atmosphere in the government office was quite cold. At that moment, the arrival of the messenger broke the deadlock. Wei Si secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't wait to get up and ask the messenger. His back view made it seem like he was fleeing. "What's the matter?" he asked. The messenger said, "There's a pair of master and servant outside the city. They claim to be your friends." After Chang'an district was conquered, Wei Si drafted several letters, intending to lure a few friends over. However, he had been too busy recently and had a minor illness. The letters had not been sent yet. "Who is it?" "They claim to be Yangxi from Jiangding County," the messenger replied. "Yangxi?" Wei Si's mind went blank for a second. Jiang Pengji's ears were very sharp. She asked, "Zixiao's friend is here?" Wei Si's previous nervousness was swept away. Surprise surged in his heart. Even his voice sounded a little cheerful. "Yes, Jing Rong is here." "Jing Rong? He's from Jiangding County in Qinzhou. His name is Yangxi. His courtesy name is Jing Rong." Wei Si could not suppress the smile on his face. This person is a great talent. Jiang Pengji sized up Wei Si's fragile little body. She asked calmly, "How talented is he?" Wei Si did not know why. He said frankly, "I'm ashamed of my inferiority." Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and looked at him. She said, "I think Zixiao is better than anyone else." Wei Si was speechless. Seeing that Jiang Pengji had returned to the table, Wei Si was surprised. "My lord, aren't you going to take a look with me? They're here to look for you, not me. Why should I join in the fun? It might cause a misunderstanding." Chapter 537. Wei Si said, "I didn't think this through. Please wait for a moment, my lord. I'll go and welcome Jing Rong. Go and come back early." Jiang Pengji buried her head in the table. The tall pile of bamboo slips and documents drowned her figure. The messenger traveled quickly, and the news was not delayed. Yangxi and his servant did not wait long outside the city. When Wei Si arrived at the city gate, he saw Yangxi sitting on the edge of the carriage, looking at the refugees in the queue with interest. "Jing Rong, is it really you?" Hearing the familiar voice, Yangxi turned his head and saw his friend in heavy clothes. It made him feel hot just by looking at him. Yangxi smiled and stepped on the stool to get out of the carriage. The two bowed in greeting. "Zixiao, I'm here to seek shelter with you. I hope you can take me in for a while." Wei Si was delighted. The smile on his face became brighter and more sincere. He hurriedly joked, "You and I are close friends. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Not to mention for a while. Even if you're here for 30 to 50 years, I won't chase you out." A few female soldiers who were paying attention to the conversation secretly exchanged glances. They thought it was fake, but they didn't expect Yangxi to be Wei Si's friend. Listening to the conversation between the two, the female soldiers revealed a meaningful look that said, "You know what I know?" Yangxi said bluntly, "Wei Zixiao, what you said is fake. If you're here for 30 to 50 years, won't your future sister-in-law turn the world upside down?" Nowadays, men were prevalent in the world. For the sake of family harmony, many men who were close to each other would consciously keep their distance. Otherwise, it might cause misunderstandings like the female soldiers. Other than facing Jiang Pengji, Wei Si was quite open in front of his friends, especially people like Yangxi who were not serious. He replied with a smile, "To be able to have a friend like Jing Rong, even if I'm not married for 30 to 50 years, what's the harm?" Yangxi suddenly stopped smiling and shook his sleeves. "I haven't seen you for a few years. You're getting more and more shameless. How can you say such things?" Wei Si glanced sideways. "I'm not as shameless as Jing Rong." A beauty's every movement and frown were full of charm. Yangxi felt that he couldn't stand it. The boy servant beside him looked at Wei Si's face with infatuation. Seeing this, Yangtze secretly hit the boy's servant on the back of his head. Wei Si was beautiful, but he was also black-hearted. Wasn't he afraid of being secretly plotted against by him? The two of them chatted for a while before Wei Si took the initiative to welcome Yangtze into the city. His attitude was warm and thoughtful, which made Yangtze nervous. He had no choice but to be tense. How many years had he known Wei Si? Once this fellow smiled like 100 flowers blooming, nothing good would come of it. The two of them were so intimate that the female soldiers guarding the gate quietly watched them leave. The page boy led the horse and followed behind them. The first female soldier said, "Is that person Sir's wife?" Female soldier B, "Why do I feel that? Sir is more like my wife." When he entered the inner city, there were very few people in the surroundings. The houses were dilapidated and damaged, and it was a desolate scene. Yangtze followed Wei Si for a while before he saw that someone was tearing down the ruins. The surface of the ground was dug full of potholes. He collected his thoughts and asked Wei Si seriously, "When I first heard that the chief of Chang'an district was Zixiao, I thought it was just someone with the same name. After all, according to Zixiao's character, it was impossible for him to fall into the trap so early. The master you serve now is very ambitious." There was a faint smile on Wei Si's lips. Yes, no one could be more ambitious than her. Yangtze was puzzled. His eyes lingered on Wei Si's face. He felt that after not seeing him for a few years, they were no longer friends. Wei Si smiled and dispelled his doubts. "Jing Rong should know my ambition. When I saw her, I knew that she could do it. She might be the only one who could do it. Since I've already met the right person, why should I care about whether the timing is right or not? A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in, and a virtuous minister chooses a master to serve. Since he had already met a capable person, he naturally had to seize the opportunity." Yangtze knew Wei Si's ambition. He said in astonishment, "You're actually serious? My heart is like a stone. It can't be changed." He was so serious that he couldn't be more serious. Yangtze was stunned for a while. He pointed at the scene of devastation and said, "That's it? Are you sure?" Wei Si said, "Within 3 months, Jing Rong just needs to watch. Who knows if the ruins today will become an existence like the capital." The more he said so, the more curious Yangtze was. He said, "Just because of what you said, I have to freeload in your house for 3 to 4 months to see what this place can become." Wei Si smiled meaningfully. This was exactly what he wanted to hear. He could drag Zhang Ping, who was in the hermit clique who was obsessed with his wife Crane, into the water. Could he not deal with Yangtze? Zhang Ping was a person who didn't care about anything, but now he was ordered around until he was dizzy and disoriented. When he sent a letter a few days ago, he was still complaining that he hadn't had a good rest for a long time. Now he could sleep soundly as soon as his head touched the pillow. Yangtze was different from Zhang Ping. It was too easy to drag him into the water. Yangtze looked at Wei Si smile and shivered involuntarily. He felt some goosebumps on his back. He said rudely, "Don't smile. I get scared looking at you." Wei Si listened and his smile grew. The pressure of the government office was basically piled on Jiang Pengji. Wei Si, a patient who had just recovered from a minor illness, did not need to do much work. There are not many places to live in the district, and it was a comprehensive renovation. Wei Si's residence was arranged to be in a house near the district headquarters. It was said that the previous owner of the house was a wealthy businessman. Later, his entire family was destroyed by the Tsing army. It was an ownerless property and was taken over by the public. Wei Si brought Yangtze and his servant into his house. He did not deliberately ask about their purpose in coming to Chang'an district. It was just a normal visit. He understood Yangtze. This person's style of doing things or planning was like a poisonous snake. He was patient, dormant, and killed with one blow. However, no one was perfect. Yangtze's hobby was a fatal flaw. This person loved delicious food. He loved to eat, but he was picky. He was very picky. When conditions permitted, he would never eat vegetables if he could eat meat, and he would never drink soup if he could drink wine. Wei Si had the experience of his previous life. He was very clear about how Yang Si was tricked by Jiang Pengji. The black-hearted Jiang Pengji tempted him with delicious food and alienated the friendship between Yang Si and his lord, causing a misunderstanding. It was fine if it happened once or twice. Yang Si also explained clearly. But what if it happened more often? Many a little makes a mickle. Yang Si's lord, Huang Song, was also quite suspicious by nature. He did not say it on the surface, but he must have remembered it in his heart. Yes, in his previous life, Yang Si was defeated by his hobby of gluttony. In his previous life, Wei Si and Yang Si secretly reminisced about old times. This person hugged him and poured out his grievances, scolding Jiang Pengji. It was easy to change a leopard's skin. Yang Si was defeated by his gluttony in his previous life. Naturally, he would be defeated in this life. In order to take care of Wei Si, the patient, Jiang Pengji, assigned him the chef she had trained in the district headquarters kitchen. One could imagine what the 3 meals in Wei Si's house tasted like. Yang Si would not stand on ceremony with Wei Si at all. It was as easy for him to order Wei Si's chef as if he was ordering his own boy servant. In just 7 or 8 days, the boy's servant tragically discovered that his master's face had grown fatter. Chapter 538. Yang Si's expression froze, and he glared at the boy's servant fiercely. Don't say it if you don't know how to speak. Which boy servant bullied his master all day like this kid? The boy servant packed up the clean clothes, folded them neatly into the suitcase, and muttered, Master is picky about food. He won't eat this or that. He won't stop until he gets what he wants to eat. I don't have the skills of a chef. Yang Si was stunned and said matter-of-factly, Then go and learn. The boy servant chuckled. I also ate some. Such delicious food must be a family skill. Who would be willing to teach outsiders? If that's the case, it makes sense. By the time Wei Si returned, the moon was already high in the sky. Yang Si squatted down to wait for him and asked, Can your family's chef be sold? Wei Si asked in a puzzled manner, You mean the residence's chef? That person was specially rewarded by the Lord because she sympathized with Si's health. As long as it was a reward, no matter if it was a person or an object, it had a special meaning and naturally could not be sold. Yang Si said, Then can you let that chef teach my boy servant culinary skills? I'm afraid I'll starve to death if I get used to eating the food in your residence. Yang Si never hid his hobbies in front of his best friend. Eating was also a kind of art. Loving to eat was also a way to enjoy life. There was nothing to be ashamed of. Wei Si thought about it and said bluntly, You can, but the chef's main responsibility is to be in charge of the residence's 3 meals and teaching others culinary skills. I'm afraid this is not his job. If you want to learn, you need to pay for it. Talking about money hurt feelings, and talking about feelings hurt money. Whether it was Yang Si or Wei Si, both of them were not beautiful white flowers who didn't understand each other. Hurting feelings was hurting feelings, but money had to be talked about. Yang Si's entire fortune was just those 2 boxes of books and some small property. Based on his understanding of Wei Si, this person would definitely demand an exorbitant price. So he decided to strike first and gain the upper hand. Zi Xiao, have you forgotten that you still owe me a few strings of money? Just pay it off. Wei Si was stunned for a moment. When did he owe him money? Everyone knew that Yang Si not only loved to eat, but was also stingy. He was not greedy, but the money that entered his pocket could not go out. Attribute Pixiao. Yang Si rummaged through the old debts. The so-called old debts of a few strings of coins originated from a steamed bun worth 1 copper coin back then. Wei Si, sure enough, he still didn't know this friend well enough. How many strings of money could a steamed bun worth of a copper coin roll out of it? After thinking about it, he changed his words and said, All right, I'll return it to you. Yang Si was surprised. When did Wei Si become so easy to talk to? When it comes to craftsmanship, I think the small kitchen in the government office is the best. Why don't you send your page boy there to learn for a few days? Yang Si nodded in agreement. For a foodie, there was nothing more tempting than delicious food. Seeing Yang Si like this, Wei Si suddenly understood why Yang Si had been tricked so badly by His Majesty in his previous life. Serves you right. During the time when the page boy went to school, Jiang Pingji found that the food in the small kitchen of the government office was increasing. Even though she had a big appetite, she felt a little bloated after a meal. The key was that the taste of the food was a little heavy, which made her mouth dry. However, her stomach had no capacity. No matter how thirsty she could only hold a mouthful of water in her mouth to quench her thirst. She could not swallow it. She called the chef over and asked. Only then did she know that the menu in the small kitchen was specially instructed by Wei Si. With this reason, Jiang Pengji waved her hand helplessly and sent the chef away. She said with a face full of affection, "Let him be." Just as Wei Si expected, the page boy showed off in front of Yang Si after learning a little, which aroused the gluttonous worm in Yang Si's stomach. When he was working the next day, Wei Si heard Yang Si waiting outside. He looked up at the sky and knew that Yang Si had come over at mealtime. It was also a unique skill to freeload in such an elegant and refined manner. Because she was busy with government affairs, Jiang Pingji basically stayed in the government office. She also ate there. There were only the two of them in the originally simple and crude government office. Today, a young man with a little baby fat suddenly appeared. Her eyes drifted away and she ate her own food, ignoring the other party. Yang Si also ate as if there was no one else around. His appetite was quite good. In short, the atmosphere was a little awkward. Wei Si originally wanted to create an atmosphere for the two of them to talk. According to his lord's charm and enigmatic temper, the two of them would not immediately collude with each other, but at least they would hit it off. Now, they had no intention of talking at all. Not only did the three of them feel that the atmosphere was strange, but the audience in the streaming room also noticed the clues. Chunlai. I came to watch the ruler and his minister eat. Why is there an awkward third wheel? Ku. Maybe it's a newly recruited talent? The streamer's territory is getting bigger and bigger now, and she needs more people. Ko Jiao Chi fan. The atmosphere is obviously not right. It feels like the three of them are eating on their own. They don't even make eye contact. Jiang Pengji was under a seal that said, "My subordinate is sick and I have to help him work overtime." For the next few days, the scene of the live streaming was in the small government office. The audience in the streaming room was a little tired of watching. The 3 mealtimes every day were their only fun. Watching the streamer and Beauty CI eat, many people could eat a few more bowls. After all, they were good-looking and had an appetite. Who could get used to the sudden appearance of a stranger? Yang Si. For the next few days, Yang Si came to the government office to report for meals. At first, it was just 1 meal a day, then 2 meals a day, and finally 3 meals a day, plus various snacks. Jiang Pengji was tired of watching it. She directly said to Yang Si, "Why don't you stay? It's quite troublesome to report every day." This was the first sentence she said to Yang Si. Wei Si was shocked when he heard this. His right hand, which was holding the brush, drew a long line on the bamboo slip. No, what was the difference between his lord's words and throwing people away? Recruiting a strategist could not be like this. Especially for someone like Yang Si, who was very sensitive about his self-esteem, such ambiguous words were a taboo. If this was said by a friend, it would at most be a joke. If it was said by a stranger, it would be very easy to be judged as mockery. Yang Si was a little unhappy at first, but when he looked up into Jiang Pingji's eyes, he realized that she did not mean to mock or disdain him. She was simply stating a fact. This discovery extinguished the flame that had just appeared in Yang Si's head. What if you don't want to? That's a pity. The food in the government office is only made from the materials that can be found around Fengyi County. It's poor in variety. Compared to delicacies, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Jiang Pengji continued. Moreover, if you don't want to, remember to pay for the meals for the next few days. Was he bullying her strategist with compound interest? If he didn't agree, he would be in debt for the rest of his life. Yang Si continued to look at her. And then, she said, "If you follow me, you can eat all over the world in the future. If you don't follow me, try to see if you can walk out of this door." Wei Si's heart was like dead ashes. With his lord's temperament, it was no wonder that the talents in her previous life were all captured. Chapter 539. Jintian Wuging. I've lived for a long time, but this is the first time I've seen someone recruit a strategist like this. Streamer, even if you want to court death, don't do it like this. If this gets out, how can you hire employees in the future? If you can't hire employees, who will work for you in the future? There's a limit to courting death. Yogwai, I'm thinking, if in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Liu Bei said to Zhuge that if you don't follow me, I won't let you go out of this door. Do you think there will still be a three-way division of the world? Haha, I'm dying of laughter. The streamer has a unique style. Ishibuzen. Although I'm very surprised, this is really in line with the streamer's temperament. It's something she would say. However, strategists in ancient society all have their own pride. With such a threatening method, the other party might not be willing to submit, right? With his life threatened, Yangtze might agree to the streamer's recruitment, feign civility, and then backstab the streamer when she's not on guard. The above viewer could be considered the emperor of truth. Didn't Yangtze trick his old master, Prince Changsho? The key was that Prince Changsho only treated him coldly. He came and went at his beck and call without giving him any face or dignity. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, directly threatened Yangtze's life. Comparing the two, it seemed that Yangtze would hate Jiang Pengji more. There were many onlookers in the streaming room. Except for a few people who could speak seriously, the others were all amusing. Gus Wheel Union, Tisk, TSK, you're still too young. If the streamer wins Yangtze over, she'll definitely throw a bunch of trivial official documents at him. She'll squeeze out all his human resources and make sure that he has no personal time apart from sleeping, eating, and going to the toilet. He'll be so busy that he won't be able to think about anything else. When the dust settles, it'll take at least half a year. Gus Wee Leonian, do you think it's possible for a person like the streamer to not win his loyalty in half a year? When everyone saw the bullet screen, they all sent a string of ellipses. It made so much sense that they were speechless. What Jiang Pengji needed the most now was people who could work. As long as the work was done, everything would be fine. Lao Sijilianmeng. Haha, I haven't been in the streaming room for a long time. Actually, you don't have to worry too much. Strategists have their own temperament. Maybe the streamer's domineering style is more to Yangtze's liking. After all, you have to believe that your host is not an ordinary person. Moreover, Wei Si and Yangtze were good friends. How could Wei Si watch him cause trouble? It was true that Wei Si could not watch Yangtze plot against Jiang Pengji, but he also did not want Jiang Pengji to lay her hands on Yangtze. If that was the case, who would dare to pledge allegiance to her in the future? Master, Wei Si could not help but shout nervously when he saw the tense atmosphere between the two of them. Jiang Pengji ignored Wei Si and continued, Sir, please don't think that I'm willful and overbearing. It's just that this is the government office. The documents that have been put aside are related to the lifeline of the district. The calamity of Fengyi County has just been settled. I don't want to attract unnecessary trouble at this time. Otherwise, Yangtze would become one of them, and it would be fine for him to walk around the government office. Otherwise, in order to keep this secret, even if Yangtze could leave the government office, he could not leave Qinggan district. Yangtze's expression did not change. Instead, he asked with interest, That's how you made Zi Xiao stay? He understood Wei Si. This person would not join the world situation so early, let alone assist a young lad with a bad temper. He had been puzzled before, but looking at it now, he felt that he knew the truth. Jiang Pengji said narcissistically, Of course not. Zi Xiao admires my talent, and took the initiative to travel thousands of miles to look for me. Wei Si looked slightly embarrassed. Yangtze almost could not keep the expression on his face. He had seen narcissistic people, but he had never seen such a narcissistic and confident teenager. Yangtze said bluntly, You're not the wise master I'm looking for. He even despised Huangsong for being too immature. He despised a willful and mischievous young lad like Jiang Pengji even more. Jiang Pingji also said, I didn't say that I want you to stay here forever. Yang Si and Wei Si were speechless. They looked at her in surprise. What did she mean? She continued, You've freeloaded so many meals in the government office these days. Doesn't your conscience hurt when you see Zi Xiao and I being so busy? You should at least help out and pay for the food, right? After you're done with your work, you can go wherever you want. I won't keep you. Yang Si's face turned slightly green. So this person was just unhappy that he didn't pay for freeloading. So she asked him to be a part-time worker? Wei Si secretly face-bombed. Forget it. He really couldn't expect his lord to take the normal route of being courteous and condescending to the wise to recruit talents. Yang Si responded with an "oh" and smiled meaningfully. It's not impossible for me to temporarily help you for a while by letting me come into contact with the government affairs of Qingan District. It's just, aren't you afraid that when I leave, the news will be leaked and it'll be disadvantageous to you? Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and said indifferently, When you leave, not only Fengyi County, but perhaps the entire Wanzhou will be in my hands. Her tone was flat, but Yang Si could feel the irresistible and absolute confidence under her calmness. Young Langjun, you're so ambitious, Yang Si said. Are you looking down on the royal family of Dongqing? At least Dongqing hadn't been completely destroyed. I heard that you used to work for Prince Changsho. Prince Changsho led his troops to besiege Qinzhou in the name of purging the emperor's corrupt officials. Don't you know what kind of scheme it is? Jiang Pengji said indifferently. As the old saying goes, it's better for the nobles and generals to have guts. Isn't it a matter of course that I, Lu Shi, can occupy the 4 districts of Fengyi County as the magistrate of Xiangyang District? At first, Wei Si was worried that Yang Si would really bear a grudge against Jiang Pengji. But as their conversation progressed, he calmed down instead. Yang Si was very ambitious and restless. Jiang Pengji's arrogant and unruly character and style were to his liking. In particular, the phrase, it's better for the nobles and generals to have guts, hit Yang Si's itch even more. In today's world, if one didn't have looks, family background, or fame, even if one was talented, it was still impossible to climb up. Yang Si followed Prince Changsho's path to become an official. Wasn't it because he was unconventional and only used those who were talented? Unfortunately, Prince Changsho was just putting on an act. He didn't really care about his background. It was inevitable that Yang Si would be at odds with him. Jiang Pengji was rather talkative. It's not just Fengyi County, not just Wanzhou, not just Dongqing, not even just the 5 countries. As long as I can stand on my feet, I want to go. I can do what my predecessors can't. At that moment, the smile on Yang Si's face was slightly forced. He said sarcastically, Young Langjun, you only have Fengyi County, and there's still the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group eyeing you covetously. Aren't you afraid that you'll cut your tongue by saying such big words? Chapter 540. Well, yours, everything is yours. Yang Si looked at the bamboo slips, which were almost as tall as a person, and felt a little depressed. He didn't know what had gotten into him just now. He agreed to be a part-time worker on a whim. What kind of part-time worker could come into contact with these messy but important internal affairs? He turned his head and saw Wei Si sitting by the tea stove, leisurely brewing tea and sipping it. Yang Si raised his hand and pointed to the pile of bamboo slips that were as tall as a person. He asked with a grim smile, Didn't you say you were very busy? If such a tall pile of bamboo slips fell, the weight could seriously injure a person. He really did not know how a small Qingan district could have so many trivial matters. Yang Si wanted to capture Wei Si and interrogate him properly. Wei Si pursed his lips and smiled shyly. He said embarrassedly, I'm weak. I can't do it for a long time. Yang Si secretly gritted his teeth. He sneered and said sarcastically, It's fine if you lie to others, but you can't lie to me. What weak? Wei Si's body was very weak, but it was not to that extent. Jing Rong, I really didn't lie to you. Last winter, I was trapped in the deep mountains. It was snowing heavily and cold air entered my body. My body is not like before. Wei Si still had a gentle smile on his face. His words sounded pitiful, but there was a hint of slyness in his eyes. If you're too busy and fall sick, all the miscellaneous things in the government office will be piled on you. In this way, I can't bear to do it. Can't bear to do it? Touch your conscience. When you said this, did you mean it? Everyone knew each other well. Others said that Wei Si was noble and virtuous, but he knew that this person was also full of evil tricks. Every word I said, absolutely not a lie, Wei Si said. Yang Si chuckled. He no longer had the strength to continue to refute. He was really afraid that this fellow would really fall sick and fall sick. Then, the trivial matters of the government office would be piled on him. As for Jiang Pingji, after capturing Yang Si as a free laborer, she was completely liberated from the government office. Yang Si worked for 3 days in a row. He found that Jiang Pengji seemed to have disappeared from the world. Except for appearing on time at meal times, she was nowhere to be seen at other times. For lunch, Jiang Pengji carried a pile of bamboo slips into the kitchen as soon as the food was served. At this moment, Yang Si realized that she was not wearing her usual wide-sleeve cloak. Instead, she was dressed in a neat brown dress. Her trousers were rolled up high above her knees, and her sleeves were rolled up, revealing most of her arms. Her feet seemed to have been soaked in the water for a long time. Yang Si glanced at the bamboo hat on her head, and there was a strange look in his eyes. Such down-to-earth attire did not resemble Lu Shi at all. Didn't they say that Lu Shi came from a noble family in Hejian County? Your Highness, Si will help you. Wei Si got up and wanted to help her take the heavy things. She looked at his body and walked around him. Quang. The bamboo slips were placed on the table, giving off a dull and loud sound. Jiang Pengji clapped her hands and said, "There have been more and more refugees entering the city recently. How's the progress of reclaiming the wasteland?" Wei Si did not feel awkward and replied, "According to the plan, about 30% of the wastelands have been opened up. It is estimated that it will take another 2 months for the wastelands to be completely opened up. Every move of land has been recorded, and it will be distributed after the household registration is completed." Hearing about the household registration, Yang Si, who was at the side, really wanted to slam the table and leave. There were more and more refugees outside, which meant that the work of household registration would become more and more onerous, not to mention the subsequent sorting and induction. If something went wrong, it would be troublesome to deal with it again in the future. Even a person like Yang Si could not bear it anymore. Jiang Pingji felt Yang Si's resentment and said, "There's no hurry as long as it can be completed before spring plowing next year. The household registration is very important. It's fine to work slowly, but it's better to be slow than messy. Compared to this, I'm more worried that there will be a drought this year." Wei Si and Yang Si were both stunned. A drought? Jiang Pengji took a ceramic bowl, poured some cold water into it, and gulped it down. "Yes, I found a few experienced farmers. They also think that the weather this year will probably be hot and have little rain." Jiang Pengji judged based on her own experience. In addition, her brain was strong, so she could see details that ordinary people could not. However, in terms of farming, she still had to listen to the opinions of the old farmers. Combining the information from both sides, Jiang Pengji felt that this year was probably not good. The water conservancy facilities in Xiangyang district had taken shape. If they took good care of the crops in the fields and got through the summer, the autumn harvest this year should not be too bad. However, the situation in Chang'an district was different. There were not many crops, but more and more refugees gathered. They could not possibly not drink water for the whole summer, could they? She checked the files of the past and found a lot of things. It turned out that Chang'an district also had a few large-scale droughts. The fields were cracked, the rivers dried up, and the crops basically withered. Wei Si said, "If there's really a drought, I'm afraid the progress of reclaiming the wasteland will be delayed." After the Tsing-Yi army wreaked havoc, the spring plowing in Chang'an district was basically scrapped. There were basically not many crops planted this spring. If there was a drought this year, They did not have to worry about the crops in the fields. They only had to solve the water problem. It's okay, there's still a lot of time. Take it slowly. Jiang Pengji poured another bowl of water for herself. I brought a few farmers to the nearby mountains to look for water sources these few days. I'm trying to see if I can open up a canal. It just so happens that Shiheng's water wheel can also come in handy. Zhang Ping, courtesy name Shiheng. Ever since he was tricked into the fire pit that was Xianyang district by his good friend Wei Ci, his daily life had been very fulfilling. Hearing what she said, Yang Si secretly looked at Jiang Pengji's feet. No wonder her feet and calves looked pale from being soaked in the water. It turned out that she had gone deep into the mountains to look for water. The audience in the streaming room had been following the live stream. Naturally, they knew how long Jiang Pengji's feet had been soaked in the water. Their hearts ached when they saw it. Oh Huang Gingbatsi, streamer, if the drought this year is very serious, I suggest building a smaller reservoir to store water. Jugao Gao, get rid of me. Look at the situation now. Digging a reservoir is not something that can be solved in a few days. That's easy to say. Where's the most reasonable place to dig a reservoir? How is the best place to build a reservoir? These are all things that require knowledge. It's not something that can be solved just by talking. If the reservoir is not built well, it can't be guaranteed that one year there will be a flood and the reservoir will collapse. When that time comes, won't those in a lower position drown? Ren Kaiching Huanda, TSK, then it's very reasonable for the streamer to prepare to dig a canal. Is it that simple to dig a canal? Chapter 541. Iduin Shomengru. It's good to build canals, but if there's really a drought, won't the water evaporate? Yikin Zhanjizero to 5. I think the streamer will think of a solution, such as sealing the canals to reduce evaporation. Although the audience in the streaming room was just chatting and some of their suggestions were whimsical, Jiang Pengji did not ignore them. Instead, she picked up many ideas and remembered them. It was impossible to dig a reservoir, but it was possible to build a few small reservoirs. Fortunately, there are many refugees now. The construction of houses in Chang'an district could be delayed. The reclamation of wasteland could also be slowed down, but the reservoirs could be put on the agenda first. It would be best if there was no drought this year. If there was, they could at least guard against it. Wei Ci saw her frown and sighed in his heart. He could not help but think of the old monk Liaochen's words. There were indeed many natural disasters in his previous life, but they were not as frequent as in this one. He didn't dare to think about how much luck that monster the old monk mentioned had stolen to turn the entire world into such a desolate place. Although the Lord did not say with certainty that there would be a drought this year, Wei Ci already believed it in his heart. Try to find underground water veins and dig wells. Anyway, these things have to be done sooner or later. Might as well do it all together. She seemed relaxed. Yang Si, who was beside her, could not help but chuckle. This person just moved his mouth, and the people below him ran errands. If he had known that eating a few meals would lead to such an outcome, he would probably still eat. For a person with a taste for delicacies, it would be a waste of a trip to the world if he had not tasted such delicious food. After all, the drought had not happened. Jiang Pengji wanted to bring people to dig canals, not only to prevent it from happening, but also to facilitate irrigation and water use for the people. It was best if the drought did not happen. If it did, at least they could survive it. Chang'an district was close to the mountains, so there were many available water sources. Jiang Pengji led a group of experienced farmers to climb up and down, drawing the route of the canals day and night. She also asked some craftsmen from Xianyang district to build a brick kiln near Chang'an district. The bricks fired in the kiln were not used to pave the ground. The new bricks were wide and long, and the cross-section was lighter and thinner than the previous ones. It was a little troublesome to fire, and there were many inferior products. Jiang Pengji did not rush them. She just asked them to continue developing and not to be afraid of spending money. She had plenty of soil, and the coal bought from Chengde County could be used until next winter. She was not afraid of squandering. Once Jiang Pengji became rich, even Wei Ci was afraid. Yang Si looked at the busy figures below the city wall. He could feel the bustling atmosphere from afar. He sighed. It's good to be rich. It's so much more convenient to do anything. If she had no money or food, Jiang Pengji would not have been able to attract so many refugees to work for her. Money was not omnipotent, but it was impossible to live without money. What surprised Yang Si was that when Jiang Pengji hired the refugees as laborers, she did not have any gender requirements, only the workload. Regardless of gender, the amount of food they received each day was the same. When he asked her why, the reason she gave him was irrefutable. Why don't you pay me the same for doing the same job? Whether it was moving bricks, digging canals, building houses, or repairing city walls, these were all extremely exhausting labor. Since the female workers who came to apply for the job could complete a day's work, they had to give her the food and pay she deserved. Wasn't this a matter of course? Not only that, the more he stayed in Qingan district and came into contact with the government affairs here, the more he felt that he had opened the door to a new world. A women's camp was actually established here. Wei Ci saw that he was surprised and explained calmly, "My lord is short of manpower. The combat power of the women's camp is not weak. In times of emergency, it's fine as long as it's a soldier." Yang Si did not believe Wei Ci's words. He said, "I think your lord has a big ambition. Normally, if there was no goal, who would let a woman come to the front of the stage for no reason?" Yang Si's intuition was sharp, but he still could not figure out the trick behind it. Wei Ci smiled. "In the future, she will also be your lord. You're confident." Yang Si did not think that he would truly acknowledge Jiang Pengji, even if her temper was indeed to his liking. Wei Ci smiled without saying a word. As time passed, the general outline of the buildings in the center of the district could be vaguely seen. The architectural style was the same as that of Xianyang district. Yang Si had never seen something like green bricks. At most, he had heard about them from the refugees on the way here. Seeing that Chang'an district was going to use green stones to pave the roads, green bricks to make tiles, and wide streets slowly taking shape in the ruins, he could not help but be speechless even though he was used to seeing rich people. Prince Changsho's mansion used jade as the steps, and the tiles were gilded. This was very normal. He was a member of the royal family. However, Chang'an district was just a small district. At its peak, there were only 18,000 households. Jiang Pengji was just an ordinary aristocratic family, but she could generously pave the main streets and lanes of the entire district with green bricks. She could also pave the newly built houses with green tiles. Yang Si did not dare to think deeply about how much manpower, material resources, and financial resources were needed. What made his heart beat faster was that Maolin district and Jiaoping district were also in full swing. The progress was slightly faster than Chang'an district. They're really rich. Yang Si sighed. Wei Ci smiled and took out a glass tea set. He pointed at it and said, "Jingrong should say that the north borderline is really rich." Looking at Yang Si's eyes that widened in shock, Wei Ci smiled even more brilliantly. "My lord did not rely on the power of her family. I don't know how much effort she has put in to get to where she is now. Although her temper is a little bad, she is indeed a wise lord who loves the people like her own children." Yang Si came back to his senses and swallowed nervously. His eyes could not help but drift towards the tea set. Previously, Prince Changsho had spent a lot of money to get a set of peerless treasures from the north. Yang Si was fortunate enough to see it once. The material was exactly the same as the glass tea set that Wei Ci took out. Prince Changsho's set was not as good as Wei Ci's. At that time, he was still lamenting that there was such a treasure in the world that was worth such a high price. Now he felt his face hurt. Looking at Wei Ci's attitude towards the tea set, he knew that it was definitely not worth such a high price. "These? Could it be that your lord made them?" Yang Si recalled the high price that Prince Changsho had charged. The corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. This was simply robbery. Yes, but she said that the market in the north borderline is temporarily saturated. There's no need to continue selling them. This year, she plans to let the caravans sell them to the 4 factions of Nanman or to countries like Zhongzhou, Beiyuan, and Xichang. At least, we can't bump into the north borderline lest we get exposed. Yang Si stared at the cup in Wei Si's hand. His slender and fair fingers pinched the transparent and resplendent cup. One could not help but lament that the years were peaceful. Nonsense. How much is this thing worth? Yang Si questioned closely. You'll only know when my lord becomes your lord. Otherwise, my lord will not let them go. There was a smile on Wei Si's face. At this moment, there was a hint of slyness like a fox. Is freedom more important or curiosity more important? Jingrong, you have to consider carefully. There's still a lot of work to do today. We were just talking about everything and have wasted a lot of time. Wei Si took a sip of tea faintly. Then he went to his desk and continued burying himself in his work. Chapter 542. It had been 2 to 3 months since the spring plowing. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. The government office was open every day, but it still felt unbearably hot. Jiang Pengji did not have so many concerns at all. She wore a simple and light brown dress every day. Her sleeves were rolled up to her shoulders, and her trouser legs were rolled up to her thighs. Wei Si blushed inexplicably at the sight of her fair arms and thighs, which attracted Yang Si's strange gaze. Do you have ulterior motives for your lord? Yang Si wrote with his right hand while fanning himself with his left hand. Even so, he still felt that the clothes on his back had been soaked in sweat, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Wei Si's hand trembled. A discordant black line appeared on the originally neat and beautiful letter. He reluctantly put away the ruined letter. He looked calm, but in fact, even his fingers were trembling. Jingrong, what nonsense are you talking about? Si and my lord are both men. Yang Si pursed his lips. Prince Chansho had reared many boys and male pets. This person did not hide it from them. Having seen the dark side of the aristocratic families, Yang Si did not think that they all believed in the way of yin and yang. Otherwise, how could men be so popular? So what if I'm a man? Speaking of which, Zixiao is 22 this year, right? There are no beautiful wives or concubines in the backyard. Even if others don't say that you have an unspeakable secret, they will think that you are gay. This is normal, Yang Si said with a smile. Looking at Wei Si's change of expression in the hot summer felt as carefree as drinking a large bowl of ice water in the dog days. It's not a big deal if you admire your lord. Wei Si retorted. Jingrong is 29 years old, but she's still single. Yang Si said, I have high standards and look down on ordinary women. In the past, matchmakers came to my house and broke through the threshold, but I was unwilling. Wei Si choked and said, I have no intention of getting married. Yang Si saw that he looked a little worried, and his heart softened a little. He was afraid that he would touch on Wei Si's sore spot. Are you still conflicted about that stupid 8 characters? At that moment, Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly came from outside the door. She said as she walked, What stupid 8 characters? You're done with the government affairs. Why are you chatting so happily? The corners of Yang Si's mouth twitched. Jiang Pengji had gone to Jiaoping district a few days ago to catch able-bodied men. When Jiang Pengji entered the room, the two of them saw that she was carrying 2 round, green ball-shaped objects in her arms. Wei Si saw the things in her arms and asked in surprise, Verdant sect green jade room? Yang Si and Jiang Pengji were stunned. The audience in the streaming room was also stunned. A watermelon was a watermelon. What was the point of making it sound so artistic? Jiang Pengji did not know that watermelon had such a name, while Yang Si had never seen a watermelon before. Wei Si was stunned for a moment before he reacted. The watermelon, which was called the Green Jade Room by many aristocratic families who flaunted their culture, had yet to arrive from the western region. He remembered clearly that after the Jiang dynasty was founded, the small vassal states in the western region specially presented it to the emperor in order to please him. It tasted pretty good and was a good thing to relieve the heat in the hot summer. Later on, it even became a treasure for the commoners to become rich. Why did it appear now? So, it has such a name, but I call it watermelon. It's quite easy to grow. We can consider planting some in Chang'an district to store water and relieve the heat in summer. Jiang Pingji placed 2 large watermelons on the table, took out a dagger, and cut one of them in half. It had been chilled in the well water, and the flesh emitted cold air. I remember that this is only available in the western region. Wei Si said. Jiang Pingji cut the watermelon. The bright red flesh of the melon made people salivate. It's indeed from the western region. Uncle Gu travels north and south to do business. He likes to exchange for some rare and strange plants. Last year, he gave me some. I planted it in the small garden of the district headquarters of Xianyang District. I heard that it bore fruit. I ate one, and it tasted pretty good. In fact, that was not the case. Jiang Pingji did not recognize the plants from ancient times at all. It was the audience in the streaming room who grew watermelons at home who told her about it. They taught her how to grow watermelons and things to take note of. After she memorized it, she passed the trick to the supervisor and let her take care of it. She went to Jiaoping District to handle some matters. When she heard Qiguan Rank's words, she hurried back to Xianyang District and plucked a few and brought them over. Rare things were always expensive. Jiang Pingji wanted Fengyi County to recover quickly. The commercial development could not be weak. However, this kind of fruit could only be eaten to satisfy one's cravings. It could not be used as food. Even if it was planted, the quantity and the field had to be limited. If the commoners saw that growing watermelons was profitable, they all wanted to plant them. Who would plant food? What would they eat without food? Jiang Pingji thought about this and served the watermelon on the plate to the 2 of them. Zixiao, you can't eat too much. This thing is cold in nature. Just eat 1 or 2 pieces to satisfy your cravings, she reminded him. Yuan Xiaodiao. Seeing watermelon, I want to eat it too. It's a natural watermelon. It's juicy and sweet. I really want to go downstairs and buy one. Xing Dalao. I'm already holding half a watermelon. I'm eating it with a spoon. It's much better than eating it 1 piece at a time. The watermelons in the back garden of Xianyang District were about 1.5 acres. She got someone to pluck them and send them to her subordinates as a reward. Holding a watermelon and nibbling on it in the summer could even improve one's irritation. Yang Si despised Jiang Pingji, but he had to admit that the food here was delicious. Even the summer fruits were unique. My lord, I have already ordered the laborers to dig a canal and cut enough bamboo according to your instructions. I have sliced them and exposed them to the sun. How are the new bricks in the brick kiln? They can already produce excellent finished products. Although they're not as solid as ordinary bricks, they won't break easily. The 3 of them nibbled on the watermelon while talking about business. The scene was too beautiful. The audience in the streaming room expressed their desire for more. Tumi Dalao. Thank you, streamer. I think the melon farmers this year are going to laugh. Because of the mystery of the streaming room and the gimmick of being able to cross dimensions, it led to many new industries. For example, watermelons appeared in the streaming room today. Perhaps the watermelons in the nearby fruit shops would be sold out. The effect of the advertisement was terrifying. Wouldn't the melon farmers laugh until their teeth could be seen? Jiang Pingji said, I'm very relieved that you're doing things. Bamboo slices were placed on both sides of the canal. The new bricks that were baked were used to pave the canal. Since the end of spring, the weather had become hotter and hotter. There had not been a single drop of rain so far. Jiang Pingji's premonition was about to be confirmed. During this period, Jiang Pingji had mobilized almost half of the manpower to dig canals, reservoirs, and wells. Jiaoping District and Maolin District were also extremely busy. Everyone was preparing for the upcoming summer. Although the construction of the district had slowed down, it did not stop. The barren district that had been ravaged by the Tsing-Yi army began to exude an aura of prosperity. As long as the people's wills were united and their efforts were directed in one direction, almost nothing was impossible. Entering June, the weather was dry and hot. When the sun was strong, stray cats and dogs did not dare to stay outside for long. Chapter 543. The second prince's wife, Anyina, was the princess of the royal family of the 3 tribes in the northern borderline. She had married into the Dongqing royal family for the sake of the friendship between the two countries. Now that she had suddenly died and her body was buried in a hurry, it was a stark contrast to the scene when she had married into the royal family. The news was originally tightly covered up by the Dongqing royal family. However, Prince Changsho had planted a spy in Qinzhou, so he knew the news almost immediately. He was still worried that he could not conquer Qinzhou and ascend the throne. And Yaina's sudden death was simply a stroke of genius. Prince Changsho almost could not hold back the ecstasy that gushed out from his heart. He could not stop rubbing his hands, and the smile on the corner of his mouth almost reached the back of his head. Is this news true? Didn't Yaina really die, suddenly? He asked eagerly, but he secretly regretted it. Why didn't he think of using Yaina as a breakthrough point? If he had known earlier, he would have exposed the dirty things between Yaina, the fourth prince, Wu Ma Jun, and the other ministers. It was a royal scandal. Not only did the princess and her uncle have an affair, but she also hooked up with so many important ministers. She should have been executed secretly long ago. Prince Changsho had some dealings with the northern borderline. The three tribes in the northern borderline gave him benefits and convenience. He used his connections to cover Yaina's actions in Dongqing. He promised her straightforwardly. No matter what Yaina did, it was transparent and open to him. Anyway, it was the emperor of Dongqing, not him. Prince Changsho was happy to watch a good show. Lu Shi, that coward, had not reacted to the death of his daughter, Lu Huan. He did not even express any dissatisfaction with the Dongqing royal family. If Lu Shi could express some dissatisfaction and stand on Prince Changsho's side against the Dongqing royal family, Prince Changsho would have ascended the throne long ago. It was fine if Lu Shi did not help. Anyway, the battle situation had tilted in Prince Changsho's favor. As long as he waited patiently for a few more months, Qinzhou would collapse on its own. However, there was a major mistake on the battlefield at this time, causing the original advantage to be equalized by Qinzhou. The battle was in a stalemate. During this period, the troops in Qinzhou and Prince Changsho's troops had several battles and conflicts. However, both sides were in a stalemate, and no one could do anything to the other. Prince Changsho could only look at the emperor's throne in Qinzhou enviously. He was itching and scratching his ears and cheeks. They thought that the situation would continue. Who knew that Yaina, the princess consort, would die suddenly in Qinzhou? Yaina was the jewel of the royal court of the three tribes in the north borderline. She had died suddenly for no reason. Regardless of whether she had really passed away due to a serious illness or had other causes of death, the royal court of the north borderline would not let it go. This was also a good opportunity for Prince Changsho to seize the opportunity to gain the support of the north borderline. Prince Changsho's ambition was not small. All these years, he had a close relationship with the three tribes of the north borderline. If they were to cooperate now, they would definitely succeed. When the strategists and generals in the tent heard his idea, their countenances changed, turning green or purple. It was very unsightly. A rather old strategist stood up and bowed. "My lord, you mustn't do this. The three tribes of the north borderline have been coveting the land of Dongqing for a long time. In recent years, their combat power has increased. If we choose to cooperate with them now, it is tantamount to inviting a wolf into the house. The danger is too great." The general sitting at the head of the table also said in a low voice, "Yes, my lord, you mustn't agree to this." The royal court of the north borderline had bad intentions when they married Princess Yaina into the royal family of Dongqing. These years, I have also heard rumors that this princess has taken in many guests. She is indeed a slut who has messed up the imperial court. The Count of Jinbei's residence was destroyed because of this slut. My lord, please reconsider. My lord, I agree. At this time, my lord, please reconsider. Once this wild wolf from the north borderline is drawn in, it will be difficult to send away. Think about how many people died with grievances when the three tribes of the north borderline ambushed Chongzhou's Shangyu County. This blood feud. Most of the strategists and generals in the tent had an extremely bad impression of the three tribes of the north borderline. This was only secondary. It was easy to invite them in, but difficult to send them away. Not to mention that the three tribes of the north borderline had been coveting Dongqing for many years. However, their opinions on this matter were not important. What was important was what Prince Changsho thought. Some officials who liked to curry favor saw that Prince Changsho looked unhappy and quickly stepped out. Don't worry, everyone. This matter may not be entirely a bad thing, a middle-aged man in a scholar's robe said. Everyone glared at him. Only Prince Changsho's eyes brightened slightly. He stopped the people around him from scolding and signaled for the man to continue speaking. With Prince Changsho's approval, the middle-aged man felt more confident. He had always liked to act arbitrarily. In the past, he had pretended to be polite and listened to the opinions of others seriously, but it was just an act. Now that he was only one step away from the throne of Dongqing, he had been stuck at this step for nearly a year. He was already so irritable that he could no longer pretend. The middle-aged man did not have much ability, but he was extremely good at observing people's expressions. He could accurately hit Prince Changsho's pulse. Continue speaking, Prince Changsho said. Everyone's face darkened. Only the middle-aged man's face exuded joy. He said, the three tribes of the north borderline are barbarians. All of them are people who eat raw meat and drink blood. Dongqing is a country of etiquette, so it has the responsibility to educate them. They are merely barbarians. After my lord has succeeded, you can just give them some rewards and send them away. If you can't send them away, you can also make some verbal promises. Full of **T. Everyone's face turned pale. Coincidentally, someone with a more extreme temper stood up and scolded the middle-aged man, calling him a vermin. The middle-aged man smiled and said, my lord is a real dragon appointed by the heavens. He is destined to rule the world. Borrowing the power of the north borderline is just following the will of the heavens. Promising some benefits to the three tribes of the north borderline is also to seek greater benefits. The land of the north borderline is the imperial land. Sooner or later, we could take it back. If we don't do this, do you have any other good ideas to successfully conquer Qinzhou? Prince Changsho's face was calm, but his heart was already in turmoil. He was increasingly satisfied with and valued the middle-aged man. He wanted to promote him to the chief strategist and become the head of the literati in his tent. The middle-aged man continued, moreover, we can let the barbarians of the north borderline take the lead and deplete their military strength. Nonsense. There's no point in working with them. Many people still wanted to persuade him, but when they saw Prince Changsho's expression, their ambitions immediately sank to the bottom. Some hot-tempered people directly stood up and scolded. Not only did Prince Changsho not quell the dispute, but he also stood on the middle-aged man's side. This made everyone's heart turn cold. The hot-tempered and courageous generals directly stood up and waved their sleeves to leave the main tent. What kind of **T was this? Seeing that many people left one after another, Prince Changsho's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He usually pretended to be polite and open-minded, but did not mean that these people could behave atrociously in front of him. However, he still had some rationality. He did not immediately agree to cooperate with the north borderline. Instead, he let the spies in Qinzhou continue to probe for information. Princess Anyina was fine. Why did she suddenly die? Chapter 544. How did Anyina die? Wu Ma Jun sneaked into the palace and ordered his trusted palace maid to pass a message to Hui Jun, asking her to come over. As soon as Hui Jun came over, he reprimanded and questioned her. What does it have to do with me how she died? If you're curious, you should ask someone else. Why would you ask me, a concubine in the palace? Hui Jun was dressed in a complicated palace dress. She was as beautiful as a painting. Even the fairies in heaven could not compare to her. She was like a delicate flower that became more and more beautiful. She could attract the souls of others just by standing there. Unfortunately, Wu Ma Jun was not in the mood to appreciate such beauty because he was furious. Wu Ma Jun had originally reprimanded Hui Jun. He wanted to hear the reason and find out more information. He did not expect her to say that. For a moment, Wu Ma Jun was so angry that his face turned red. He was so furious that he wanted to strangle Huijun. This solitude understands. You must have thought of a way to kill her, right? You ignorant woman. Do you know how important Inyana is? As long as this woman is alive, I can get the power in her hands and overthrow that old bastard. But you? Huijun sneered and said, although it's daytime now, it's better not to daydream. How can you be so sure that I killed Inyana without any evidence? She's the second princess, and I'm your father's favorite concubine. According to our relationship, I'm considered Inyana's elder. There's no conflict between us. Why would I want to kill her for no reason? Do you think it's because of you? Wuma Jun asked in return. Wasn't it because you knew about me and her and were jealous? That's why you killed her? Although he was completely despised by the emperor and was even kicked in the chest by the emperor, causing Wuma Jun to lie in bed for more than half a year, Wuma Jun did not think that he had no chance to ascend to the throne because he had cooperated with Inyana and Prince Changsho. If he had planned it carefully, he might have already ascended to the throne. Who knew that bad luck would come one after another? First, Lu Huan gave birth to a pair of freakish babies in the palace. He was placed under house arrest by the emperor, and Lu Huan died from a hemorrhage due to dystocia. After Lu Huan died, he lost the support of the powerful Yu family. Then, Inyana died suddenly, which cut off his connections in the north borderline. Now, without the support of these two parties, how could he negotiate a deal with the sly old fox Prince Changsho? How could Wuma Jun accept that the throne, which had been within his reach, was getting further and further away from him? After thinking about it, he felt that Huijun had something to do with Inyana's death. Before Inyana died, she had entered the palace to visit the Empress. Then, she went to Huijun's palace to talk to her for a while. After that, she died suddenly that night. This was the information he could find out. Based on the news alone, Wuma Jun's intuition told him that the death of Inyana's wife was related to Huijun. That was why he took the risk to sneak into the palace, just to find out the truth. Huijun almost burst out laughing when she heard Wuma Jun's narcissistic words. Would she be jealous because of Wuma Jun and Frame Inyana? What kind of melodramatic drama was going on in this person's mind? You can think whatever you want. Inyana's death has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, then don't believe me. Huijun looked tired. She waved her sleeves and was about to leave. Wuma Jun was unwilling to let her go, so he was furious. In the end, he raised his hand and slapped her. An obvious five-finger mark appeared on her fair and delicate skin. One side of her cheek was obviously swollen. Wuma Jun finally calmed down when he heard the loud sound and felt the numbness in his right palm. He slapped her so hard that Huijun's face was slapped to the side. She felt a slight metallic taste spreading in her mouth. She stuck out her tongue and licked the blood at the corner of her mouth. She did not cry. Instead, she revealed a coquettish smile and said miserably, "You useless man. You said you loved me the most, but you framed me with a groundless crime for a dead person just to appease the panic in your heart. Wuma Jun, you really have guts." She left angrily after she finished speaking. Wuma Jun was also shocked by his own actions. He stood rooted to the ground, and the look of despair and heartbreak in her eyes before she left echoed in his mind. He wanted to chase after her to apologize, but Huijun had already left. Oh no, I've heard her this time. Could it be that she really didn't kill Inyana? Wuma Jun muttered to himself with a remorseful look on his face. Huijun, who had left sadly, had a cold expression on her face. She dabbed some cosmetics on her handkerchief and applied it to her face. She realized that her body had become exceptionally healthy after she entered the palace. Her skin was so tender that it was easy to leave marks, but it healed quickly. Wuma Jun's slap had indeed stunned her. Her cheek was swollen, and she looked very miserable. However, Huijun knew very well that this kind of injury would disappear in 15 minutes at most. It would heal faster if it was combined with medicine. TSK, if Inyana didn't die, I would be the one who died, Huijun muttered to herself in the bronze mirror after she sent the palace maid away. A determined and vicious look flashed in her eyes. Why did Inyana die? It was because this woman had found out some information that she should not have. This information would cause Hui Jun to die a tragic death. Hui Jun was born in the slums of Shanjing. She was just a lowly prostitute who could be bullied by everyone. The Lu residents helped her conceal her identity. Logically speaking, it should be foolproof. However, Enyina seemed to know about the past. Thinking of this, Huijuan's face darkened. She recalled that day. Now that she thought about it, she still felt resentful. Enyina entered the palace to talk to the Empress for a while with the excuse of congratulating the Empress on the Thousand Autumn Festival in advance. Then, she went to Huijuan's palace. The first sentence she said made Huijun extremely frightened. Fortunately, she could control herself and did not show any unusual expression. Enyina said, "I know that you're just a lowly prostitute in Shanjing." Huijuan's heart trembled, but she responded with a smile. "What do you mean, Your Highness? I'm innocent. When did I become a prostitute?" In fact, Enyina did not have any concrete evidence. She knew some secrets, but she was not sure. Therefore, she chose this opportunity to trick Huijun. However, Huijuan's reaction was too normal, which made Enyina uncertain. She said, "I'm afraid the imperial noble consort doesn't know yet, right? Your face is exactly the same as that of an imperial noble consort many years ago. The emperor doted on you so much because of your face. The imperial noble consort was extremely beautiful, but unfortunately, the heavens were jealous of her beauty. She died of illness at a young age. The emperor was heartbroken and ordered to collect beauties who were somewhat similar to the imperial noble consort in order to remember her. All the officials from all over the country offered their gifts. Among them, there was a woman who looked very similar to her. However, this woman already had a husband and was 3 months pregnant." Enyina smiled meaningfully when she said that. Huijuan's expression had already changed slightly. Chapter 545. Enyina continued. This woman was originally an ordinary village woman. In order to please the emperor, the local officials killed her husband and sent her to the palace when she was pregnant. Because of her face that resembled that of the imperial concubine, she was pampered by the officials for a period of time. Unfortunately, she violated a taboo and tried to compare herself to the late imperial concubine Wang. She died mysteriously. Along with the baby girl who was born in the palace, both mother and daughter disappeared. However, the information I found is more than that. Is Imperial Gui Fei in the mood to listen? Huijun suppressed the restlessness in her heart and tried her best to calm her expression. This story is interesting. Tell me about it, Princess Consort Enyina. I've been very bored these few days. It's good to kill time by listening to it. Her reaction was very calm, and there was not a single flaw in her. The more she was like that, the more suspicious Enyina became. I spent a lot of effort and finally found the palace maid who served that woman back then and asked for some information. Enyina said sarcastically, that woman broke a taboo and tried to compete for favor with Imperial Consort Wang, so she was detested by the officials. The emperor felt that this person was insatiably greedy and was not qualified to be compared to the high and mighty Guifei, so he threw her into the slums and demoted her to a prostitute. That woman became a prostitute. Every day, she had to welcome and send people off. How pitiful. Her daughter followed in her footsteps. Poor mother and daughter. Huijuan's heart trembled. She had already guessed what Enyina was going to say. However, she knew that if she admitted to this matter, she would probably die miserably. Therefore, Huijuan's expression was natural. She used a handkerchief to wipe the tea stains at the corner of her mouth and said elegantly, "It's indeed a story that makes one weep. Is the princess consort here to warn me not to overestimate myself and compete for favor with the late imperial consort Wang? Or could it be that he wanted this consort to know that his status was only because of his face that he was favored by the officials? If that's the case, then I appreciate it." Although Enyina did not name anyone, she knew very well that the story was very likely to be true. Huijun was miserable, but she still had a gorgeous smile on her face. Enyina tried to probe her a few times, but she fended them off easily. and Yaina had no choice but to ask meaningfully. Imperial noble consort, do you know where that woman's daughter went? Hui Jun said, since she's a low-class prostitute, she must have been tortured to death by others. And Yaina secretly hated Hui Jun for her flawless defense. However, she did not have any concrete evidence and could not control Hui Jun. And Yaina valued her influence on the emperor. If she could control Hui Jun, it would be easy to overthrow the entire Dongqing plan. The princes were already locked in a fierce battle, and Prince Changsho was still eyeing them covetously outside. If the emperor were to suddenly die at this time, Dongqing would fall into complete chaos. When their internal strife was almost over, the cavalry of the 3 tribes of the northern borderline would lead their troops to the south. They would be able to conquer Dongqing effortlessly. After Yaina left, Hui Jun sat on the spot for a while and ate 2 abortion pills that she had secretly hidden. She was pregnant very early in the month. As a prostitute, she had a few accidental pregnancies and was forced to abort by her mother several times. She had long been infertile. However, ever since Lu Shi's Langjun performed the celestial technique on her, her body was getting better day by day. Her yin and yang were harmonized with a man's. Instead, it was like using yang to nourish yin. Her damaged reproductive organs had also recovered. A few days ago, she found out that she was pregnant. Hui Jun was very ruthless. She had never thought of giving birth to a child for the emperor. After listening to Yaina's story, it was even more impossible. Therefore, Hui Jun had a miscarriage. The reason was that she had eaten the snacks sent by Princess and Yaina, which were mixed with a large number of abortifacients and blood circulation substances. The emperor was furious when he heard the news. Perhaps the princess is worried that I'll give birth to Lin and obstruct her husband's path to power, she complained tearfully. The emperor was used to seeing her arrogant side, but he had never seen her so weak and pitiful. She felt pity for Yaina and the second prince, and she hated them to the core. Hui Jun insidiously provoked the emperor's most sensitive nerves. He was old, and his children coveted the throne. Now, he could not even tolerate the blood in the belly of the favored imperial noble consort. If that was the case, Yaina would not have died a sudden death. Hui Jun added fuel to the fire and revealed the filthy relationship between her and the 4th prince. She said, "The second princess sees me as a thorn in her side. I'm afraid she's worried that I'll spill the beans in front of the emperor and expose the illicit relationship between her and the 4th prince." The emperor was a typical example of only the officials were allowed to set fires, but the people were not allowed to light lamps. He could fool around in chaos, but others could not. That night, Yaina died a sudden death. It was not that the emperor had not thought about the reaction from the north borderline, but it was nothing compared to his majesty as the emperor. The royal family of Dongqing wanted to hide the news, but they could not stop Prince Changsho from hindering them. The news of Yaina's sudden death quickly spread from Qinzhou. At the same time, a letter on a horse galloped north from Prince Changsho's military camp. It was already midsummer when the news reached Jiangpengji. It was the hottest time of the year. She slightly lowered the recruitment standards and took her time to recruit soldiers. The female battalion was further expanded, and the number of soldiers reached 5,000, while the male battalion had 15,000. There were a total of more than 20,000 soldiers in the male and female battalions, which was not considered weak among the forces in the north. At the same time, she and a few strategists slightly improved the previously discussed method of farming. The original purpose of the method of farming was to deal with the problem of excess captives. There are not many captives at the moment, but the food shortage was imminent. After a few discussions, they decided to put the first batch of farming experimental plots in Qingan district for trial. The reason was simple. There was a lot of wasteland near Qingan district. The terrain was stable and open, and the built canals were relatively complete. If it was used as a trial experimental plot for farming, the effect would be better. For this reason, Jiangpengji even transferred Li Yun, who was an expert in farming, from Malan district. Because of the reservoir, canals, and a few newly dug wells, Chang'an district was not very short of water. Li Yan rolled up his trousers and held a ceramic bowl to drink water in big mouthfuls. The cold water vapor slightly dispelled the high temperature caused by the exposure to the sun. When I want to see the fields today, a part of them split open. Fortunately, my lord has foresight. Otherwise, I don't know if I can drink water. After being exposed to the sun for a whole day, Li Yun's skin, which had taken a lot of effort to maintain a fair complexion, turned a few degrees darker. Yang sighed faintly. Fini County is fine, but the people in other places, I'm afraid they'll have a hard time. In this world, whether the people can live a good life or not depends on what kind of local officials they encounter. Jiang Pengji's personality was terrible, but Yang Si had to admit that with her around, the people's lives were indeed much better. Li Yan nodded in agreement. He wore an expression that said, "My lord is the best." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.